Hey everyone, welcome to another adventure. Today, Audio Novel presents Police in Los Angeles by the amazing Mutter. Supporting talented authors like Mutter is what keeps these incredible stories alive. Be sure to check out their Patreon or join their Discord, links are in the description. And if you love audiobooks like this, visit my Patreon for more. Your support helps bring these stories to life. Thanks for being part of this journey. Let's dive into the story. Police in Los Angeles. Chapter 1, Police Academy Admission. Damn gang kids, just wait till I become a cop. I'll be chasing you every day. In a shabby bathroom, Zhang Qingmo grimaced at his reflection in the mirror, inspecting the wounds on his face. Now, his name was Jack Tavaler, a 21-year-old mixed-raceman born in California. 3 years ago, in 2015, a fire in his apartment turned Jack into an orphan. He suffered brain death due to inhaling toxic fumes. If not for a soul from another world crossing over into his body, he would have remained in a vegetative state for life. The mirror reflected a young, handsome face, marred by bruises and swelling. Ignoring these, his features rivaled the peak of John Lone in the old movie, The Last Emperor, and his profile was comparable to Keanu Reeves. Jack's diverse ancestry was evident. His grandfather was Chinese, his grandmother was a Jewish woman from Hawaii, and his maternal grandfather married an Italian woman from England. The soul that crossed over into Zhang Qingmo's body did not inherit any of the original memories, not even the language. Unfortunately, his poor English skills from his previous life left him struggling, turning a recently graduated high school student into a desperate illiterate. If dealing with his stern, British-accented doctor wasn't enough, recognizing the pretty intern doctor next to him was unmistakable, Meredith Grey from Grey's Anatomy, a show he had only seen a few episodes of but whose lead character's face was highly recognizable. Adding to the confusion, his self-proclaimed uncle, Daniel, who didn't resemble him at all, turned out to be a cop from Hawaii 5-0. Thus, the grumpy old doctor was indeed Dr. House. A frequent viewer of American TV dramas, Zhang Qingmo realized he had landed in a bizarre, stitched-together world of TV shows. Thanks to Dr. House, the explanation for Jack's lack of original memories and poor English was attributed to memory loss due to prolonged brain hypoxia. After a series of medical tests, he was discharged from the hospital. Due to his age, Jack, now 18, managed to refuse living with his relatives on either side, choosing to live independently to avoid exposing his identity as a transmigrator. This decision was somewhat accepted, likely because his parents had eloped to Los Angeles, causing strained family relations. From that day on, a middle-aged man from another world began living under the name Jack Tavaler in this peculiar world. 3 years swiftly passed. Using the small grocery store left by his parents, Jack, the soul from another world, successfully integrated into Los Angeles, the city of angels. Jack, open the door. Are you okay? A hurried knock and a concerned voice came from the door. Jack quickly left the bathroom and opened the door. 2 beautiful women stood outside. One had a mature, cold, and striking appearance, while the other looked sweet and girl-next-door-like. Captain Anderson, Officer Hannah, welcome. Jack held the door, smiling and bowing as he gestured for them to enter. Did those street punks trouble you again? Poor Jack, let me see your face. Hannah, looking upset, pushed Jack onto the sofa and straddled him, closely examining his face for potential scars. Jack made a pained expression and raised his hands to signal his innocence to Captain Anderson, who was smirking on the side. He, a helpless young man, was no match for this overly enthusiastic Texan girl. Hannah, he's suffocating. Captain Anderson, seeing Jack's distress, gently patted Hannah's shoulder, reminding her. Though Jack was 185 centimeters tall, he weighed less than 70 kilograms, making him quite slender for an American. Hannah, with her impressive physique, was shorter by half a head but weighed nearly 65 kilograms, and her strength easily overpowered his. Hannah, I swear, once I pass police training, I'll spank you, Jack said, trying to shift the attention from his embarrassment. Realizing her position might be inappropriate, especially with her boss watching, Hannah quickly got off and opened the fridge. Captain Anderson sat beside Jack, her gaze seemingly scanning him unintentionally. Everything ready for tomorrow's police academy training? Jack nodded. Due to their unusual relationship, Anderson's arrangements were uncharacteristically blatant, not typical of Americans. How did you regain your reading and writing skills within a year and earn an associate degree in 2? I believe in you. I just think you should smile more often, Jack teased, seeing the blush on her face, enjoying the thrill of flirting with his future superior. Sensing the growing tension, Hannah looked suspiciously between them. Hannah, help Jack move his things to my car. Give us 5 minutes. Hannah, obeying her superior, left with the box of Jack's belongings. Once alone, Anderson straddled Jack's lap, lovingly stroking his wounds before giving him a passionate kiss. Captain Anderson, you don't have to. Call me Zoe. Don't you want to help me? We need high-quality recruits, and I promised your Uncle Daniel I'd take care of you. Why become a cop? With your learning ability, you could easily get into Caltech. You're only 21. Jack gently patted her on the backside, stopping her. We've discussed this. I have my reasons. You should go before Hannah gets suspicious. Zoe playfully wiggled on his lap before reluctantly standing up. I'll pick you up tomorrow. I'll have those punks dealt with. After I graduate, I'll handle them myself. Remember to lock the door. Feeling the lingering scent of the sea, Jack sighed, still aroused by Zoe's departure. After calming down, he checked his healing wounds in the mirror, leaving only faint marks to avoid suspicion from Zoe. His miraculous healing ability came from a golden finger called the Detective Development System. It had been locked since his arrival, showing only 2 attributes, Spirit 15 and Physique 8, along with 3 skill trees, Professional, Life, and Language skills, all initially grayed out. Gradually, as Jack improved his English, a gray English icon appeared in the Language skills tree, hinting at the right direction for growth. Seeking advice from his Uncle Daniel, he was introduced to Zoe Anderson, who had just taken over the Wilshire District Police Station. Over 2 years, Jack integrated into the community, maintaining a clean record and gaining an associate degree. Zoe provided support, introducing him to Officer Hannah for shooting practice and ensuring his safety through her connections. Their relationship naturally developed, with Zoe mentoring him in police work, leading to an inevitable romantic involvement. Jack's efforts paid off, adding new skills to his system, with Spirit increasing to 18 and Physique to 12. Last week, Zoe handed him his police academy acceptance letter, finally activating his system. Ignoring the somewhat restrictive system notifications, Jack spent his soul system coin to upgrade his healing skill, ensuring he could handle any training injuries. This remarkable ability allowed precise healing, but it temporarily drained his spirit, requiring sleep for recovery. After locking the door and another healing session, Jack fell into a deep, restful sleep. At 7 a.m., Jack woke to his alarm, called Zoe, and unlocked the door. He prepared breakfast with the last ingredients, just as Zoe arrived. Smelling the food, Zoe's eyes lit up. It's been a while since I had your breakfast. What's in it? It smells amazing. Following his principle of never explaining Chinese cuisine ingredients to Americans, Jack smiled, if you woke up in my bed every day, you'd always have my breakfast. Zoe playfully pushed him and started eating. Half an hour later, carrying his packed belongings, Jack left the apartment with Zoe. As they drove off, he glanced back at the elderly couple now running the grocery store. Thinking of your parents? Zoe misunderstood, gently caressing his cheek. No, just saying goodbye to my past. Chapter 2, Graduation. Susie told me a long time ago. Dear, please don't join the army. They only like to make a fuss and fight. They look a bit weird in their tight pants. Their table manners are poor, and they're very rude. They have a passionate sense of humor, and their jokes are crude. Jack always thought the song officers sang during their runs was a bit crazy, but since the instructors taught it this way, everyone followed along. The tune stayed the same, and instructors loved to change the lyrics to be as crude as possible. The slightly chubby middle-aged man beside him was singing enthusiastically, even though he was almost out of breath. 3 years after his initial crossing, Jack felt a mix of emotions when he encountered another familiar TV character. This middle-aged man was John Nolan, the protagonist of The Rookie. The Rookie was the last show Jack had watched before his transmigration. While he couldn't remember every episode of the episodic drama, seeing John made him realize why Zoe had seemed so familiar when they first met. Zoe was the police captain who was shot while protecting John in the series. Jack hadn't recognized her immediately because the real Zoe was much younger and more attractive than the actress who played her. "Hey, kid, what are you thinking about? Today is the final driving test. Do your best." John put an arm around his shoulder, pushing him towards the training field. "Thinking about how to beat you," Jack grumbled. John was a unique case, a 40-something former construction worker joining the police academy, competing with a bunch of young people. Despite the average age of the recruits being around 30, John excelled in almost everything, except the physical and academic tests where Jack had to give his all to secure first place. Yesterday, in the handgun shooting test, Jack lost first place to John by a hair, missing out on 4 experience points. Earning experience in the pitiful system was challenging. Passing a test only earned 1 point, and you needed to place first to get 5 points. Today's driving test was likely another loss. Jack had little driving experience before his transmigration. Afterward, he had retaken his driver's license under Zoe's guidance but hadn't bought a car. His driving skills, honed under the police academy's instructors, were only at a competent level, not enough to compete with a veteran truck driver like John. Looking at the system's requirement of 5 gold coins to upgrade driving skills to proficient, Jack gritted his teeth and chose to forego it. Despite daily tests from the 15th week onward, he had only saved up 2 coins. It was not enough. As long as he could win 2 of the 4 comprehensive medals at graduation, it would be worth Zoe's special effort to reserve a spot for him. American society wasn't completely devoid of connections and favors. Zoe must have owed quite a few favors to secure that spot, and Jack didn't want to disappoint her. Once he earned the system rewards for officially becoming a police officer, he could consider upgrading his skills. Jack couldn't remember the specific plot where Zoe got killed, so he planned to upgrade his healing skills to proficient and keep a close watch on John. If necessary, he would take a bullet for Zoe to prevent her from falling victim to the plot. After all, Zoe was the first woman in this world for him. As expected, John finished first in the driving test, doing a celebratory dance and pointing at Jack. "First round of drinks is on you tonight." Jack rolled his eyes. "I don't understand. How did the youngest and oldest recruits become such good friends?" Jack, John, and Lucy were hanging out at a small bar that night. Lucy Chen, with her Asian features, pointed between the 2 handsome men, posing a soul-searching question. Jack shook his head, indicating he didn't understand either, and signaled to ask John. To be honest, he had initially befriended John to keep an eye on him and save Zoe. Unexpectedly, they became the best of friends among the recruits. John shrugged and glanced at Jack. "When everyone looked at me with pity or sympathy, thinking I was joining the academy due to a midlife crisis after my divorce, only Jack asked if men only truly wanted to make a difference in the world when they were older and free from hormonal influence." "Really?" Jack feigned confusion. "I remember asking if men only turned to fishing or seeking justice after reaching middle age." "Hey." John, feeling embarrassed, glanced at Lucy, who was giggling and placing a comforting hand on his leg. Seeing their interaction, Jack smiled meaningfully. "So, how are you 2 planning to keep my mouth shut?" Jack knew from the show that John and Lucy had a secret affair early on. Judging by their current behavior, it seemed they were already involved. Caught off guard, Lucy blurted out, "I have some model friends." Jack leaned back, supporting his chin with his right hand, and asked in a deep, magnetic voice, "Dear Lucy, do I look like someone who can't find his own fun?" His smile revealed 2 shallow dimples and a row of neat teeth. Lucy froze, momentarily forgetting to breathe. "Wipe that smile off, kid." "That's cheating," John said, pulling Lucy close to assert his dominance. Jack had no interest in wooing Lucy. In fact, he despised how TV show writers often messed up stories with random romantic entanglements. But being in this strange world, he was curious to observe if these characters with flesh and blood would act like puppets controlled by writers or if they would live their true lives. So far, Jack remained optimistic. The original rookie trio had replaced a black guy with him. Then there was the Texan girl Hannah, whom he had never seen in the show. The people around him seemed to lead normal lives with their own joys and sorrows. "So, we got tasered, pepper sprayed, and nearly drowned in a bucket just to wear this in 95-degree August heat." Jack incredulously stared at his official LAPD uniform. The dark blue, almost black outfit was made of wool. They say there's a short-sleeve version. Once you're no longer a rookie, you can choose it, John said, already eager to wear his uniform. Suppressing the urge to curse, Jack reluctantly put on the $160 uniform, the biggest clothing expense since his transmigration. Becoming an LAPD officer wasn't cheap. Training fees and gear cost nearly $10,000. Without selling the small apartment and grocery store his parents had left, Jack would have needed a loan. Fortunately, as a police academy recruit, he started receiving a salary, leaving him some money for future rent. Wow, looking sharp. You should consider strolling through Beverly Hills in that. You could earn more in one night than months as a cop, John joked. Jack playfully punched his shoulder. You're not bad yourself. From what I know, Beverly Hills has more rich old ladies. As a disciplined force, the LAPD emphasized honor and awareness. During the graduation ceremony, the recruits sat upright, listening to the officers' speeches. This was also the first time Jack saw Zoe in uniform, exuding a cold, elite aura typical of American leaders. This was likely how others viewed her as the top commander of a Los Angeles police precinct. At the awards ceremony, Jack and John each earned 2 of the 4 comprehensive medals. Lucy also ranked among the top, an impressive feat for an Asian woman. Late at night, at Zoe's residence. Sensing Zoe's sudden sadness, Jack gently stroked her back, whispering, "What's wrong, sweetheart?" Zoe blushed with embarrassment. "Don't call me that. It's my dad's nickname for me. If he knew, he'd shoot you with his Colt Python." Jack often teased her with this childhood nickname during intimate moments. After a moment of silence, Zoe cupped Jack's face, stared into his eyes for a long time, then pressed her cheek to his chest, listening to his heartbeat. Feeling her tears, Jack was surprised. "Are you crying? What happened?" Zoe buried her head, avoiding his gaze, and quickly wiped her tears. "I just feel maintaining this relationship is unfair to you, but I can't let you go. Am I being too selfish?" Jack was puzzled. Did American women also overthink relationships? Zoe bit his chest in anger. "We're about to be superior and subordinate. Don't you know what that means? If our relationship is exposed, my career is over." So? Jack was confused. In TV shows, such relationships were common. Just keep it discreet. But then he realized Zoe, at 35, was already a precinct commander, indicating strong connections and scrutiny from others. "Then why did you specifically recruit me to Wilshire?" Jack felt Zoe's actions were contradictory. "I thought you might just be infatuated with me because you're young. Maybe you'd soon tire of me or leave for Hannah. But the longer I spend with you, the less I want to be apart. I'm starting to regret it. Seeing Hannah genuinely like you makes me jealous of her youth." Zoe's voice trailed off. Jack was stunned. What kind of twisted logic was this? She created her own love rival. Reflecting on his time with Zoe, Jack realized the problem might be him. Their relationship had started with mutual need, but his middle-aged soul's nurturing habits likely won her over. He'd cook for her when she was busy, make medicinal meals when she neglected her health, and even used his healing skills to improve her skin texture. Did these actions win over the elegant older woman? This wasn't how it went in TV shows. Faced with Zoe's confession, Jack couldn't remain indifferent. Though passive in past relationships, he knew how to woo a woman. Moreover, Zoe was a rare, smooth-skinned, odorless American woman. So what if she was older? Older women could be more caring. She even planned ahead, offering Hannah as a backup girlfriend. Where could he find such a considerate woman? With that in mind, Jack decided to use the ultimate weapon in TV romance. He flipped Zoe onto her back, whispered in her ear, "I love you, silly." Simultaneously, he opened the system in his mind, ignoring unread messages and rewards. He immediately upgraded his healing skill from competent to proficient. Zoe was saved, Jack said so, and not even Jesus could stop him. Jack vowed to use "I love you" sparingly in the future. It was too exhausting. Chapter 3, This patrol car is a write-off. After thoroughly exploring Zoe's living room, kitchen, bathroom, and even her walk-in closet over 2 days, Jack finally remembered an important task he had yet to complete. With only 3 days left before reporting to Wilshire Police Station, he needed to find suitable housing. Los Angeles has few apartment buildings, mostly consisting of single-story houses or two-story small villas. Despite Jack expressing his willingness to live in a rough neighborhood, Zoe and Hannah vehemently opposed it. Initially, Jack planned to ask John if he was interested in sharing a place. However, he forgot that John had a wealthy friend and was currently living comfortably in a luxurious home in a high-end community. In the end, Jack had to move into Hannah's attic. The advantage was saving on rent, which allowed him to buy a used Chevrolet for commuting. The downside was becoming Hannah's personal chef and accumulating several bite marks on his chest from Zoe. Regarding his relationship with Zoe, they agreed to meet only once a month until they found a suitable solution. Rookie reporting day at Wilshire Police Station, patrol briefing room. Jack glanced around, recognizing a few familiar faces, and walked straight to the front row. Just like in college, the veterans sat in the back while the rookies took the front row seats. Within minutes, a dejected Lucy walked in, spotting Jack like a beacon of hope. Jack waved her over to sit beside him and whispered, "What happened?" Lucy, looking pitiful, began to complain, "My old car broke down this morning, nearly making me late. I had to push it for 2 blocks, and some idiot even tried to mug me in broad daylight. Before coming in, I ran into that grumpy Officer Bradford. He threatened me, saying if he became my training officer, he'd make my life a living hell. Today has been the worst." Jack carefully chose his words, trying to warn Lucy, while hazing rookies is traditional, following Murphy's Law, you're likely to end up with him. "Please, no," Lucy's mood worsened. In the last minute before the briefing began, John rushed into the room, adjusting his uniform and looking around. Seeing Jack and Lucy, he sighed in relief and sat beside them. Before Lucy could speak, a middle-aged African-American officer entered. He was Wilshire Station's duty commander, Sergeant Wade Gray. As expected, during the pairing of rookies with training officers, Lucy was assigned to the gruff Bradford, John to the African-American female officer Talia Bishop, and Jack to the Latina officer Angela Lopez, who sat beside Hannah. Hannah gave him a triumphant wink. After the briefing, everyone left the room. Jack spared a thought for John, who was being lectured by Sergeant Gray. As a fellow middle-aged man, Gray held a deep prejudice against the oldest rookie in LAPD history. It would take a while for John to earn his respect. "Is this car salvageable?" Jack frowned at the Chevrolet patrol car before him, while Angela Lopez looked at it with disdain. It was her assigned vehicle. They had just arrested a couple suspected of illegal entry. These lesbians, in a fit of psychological distress, had trashed someone's bathroom. After locking them in the back seat, Jack chatted briefly with Angela, only for the pair to start fooling around in the patrol car. Once they got them back to the station and locked up, Jack and Angela donned gas masks and rubber gloves to clean the mess. "I feel like I've lost something. I'll never be the same. Every time I close my eyes, all I see is that gross scene. Why can't lesbians be as eye-pleasing as they are in the movies?" Jack complained while driving. "Don't mention what happened again, or I'll give you the lowest evaluation today," Angela warned, spraying the back seat with a can of disinfectant. Jack made a zipping motion across his lips, complying. Angela's appearance differed slightly from what Jack remembered. Her features were softer, and her large brown eyes were striking. However, it was clear that working as a patrol officer was tough. Her skin showed signs of stress. She had a tomboyish demeanor, quick and decisive in her actions, a stark contrast to female officers in administrative roles. "Turn right up ahead. There's a food truck by the park where we usually have lunch," Angela directed. After parking, Jack retrieved a large food box he had prepared that morning from the trunk and headed towards the makeshift tables by the food truck, where 2 other rookie teams were already waiting. "How's your morning?" Jack greeted John and Lucy by the food truck. "Looks like someone needs a comforting hug," Lucy said, her face reflecting a rough morning under Bradford's scrutiny. "Go ahead, try it," Lucy warned as John extended his arms for a hug. John attempted to console his girlfriend. "Is the TO giving you a hard time? It's their job to push us and test our real reactions. Just figure out how to please him. It's not that hard. Easy for you to say." Lucy gave him a sidelong glance. "Have you figured out what your 2 likes for lunch?" Seeing John speechless, Jack ordered a Mexican burrito for Angela, grabbed 2 sodas, and approached the chatting training officers. "What's this? Did you make it?" Angela's interest peaked when Jack opened the food box, making her burrito less appealing. "Pan-fried dumplings. Want to try?" "I made them this morning with shepherd's purse and pork filling." Unsure if she could use chopsticks, Jack handed her a plastic fork. "There's chili sauce, too. I made it myself. If you like spicy food, you can try some." Angela nodded approvingly as she ate. "You cook Chinese food?" "I've never had this before." "It's delicious." Pleasing the TO. "That's my forte," Jack thought, winking at the 2 dumbfounded rookies. Chapter 4, Shooting Practice. In the afternoon, Angela Lopez took over driving for their patrol. After Jack proposed trading daily lunches for an hour of shooting practice after work, she readily agreed. She also told Jack to call her Angela from now on instead of Officer Lopez. Sitting in the passenger seat, Jack opened his system interface to check new notifications. Their successful arrest that morning had earned him 5 experience points. From the graduation ceremony, he had received 2 comprehensive ability medals and the reward for officially becoming a police officer, totaling 4 system coins. Combined with the 2 coins he had saved during the academy, he had accumulated 6 coins. However, he had impulsively spent 5 coins upgrading his healing skill to proficient, leaving him with only 1 coin and 45 experience points. Jack realized that even after graduating from rookie status, a regular patrol officer's daily work involved mostly trivial matters. This realization strengthened his desire to involve himself in major plot lines. Arresting or killing dangerous criminals would surely yield more experience than apprehending a couple of lesbians, right? Jack also had a plan for using his system coins. After graduating from the police academy, both his mental and physical attributes had increased to 19 points. The benefits of these attributes were becoming increasingly apparent. The more he focused on studying or training, the faster his mental strength grew. Conversely, improved mental strength greatly enhanced his learning and training efficiency. Physical attributes were even more straightforward. Initially, Jack's physical attribute was only 8 points. As he engaged in regular exercise and improved his diet, surpassing 10 points resulted in his mild nearsightedness disappearing and various minor ailments caused by bad habits vanishing as well. Joining the police academy and learning new combat techniques, while secretly using healing to recover from muscle fatigue, allowed his physical attribute to increase rapidly, eventually matching his mental attribute. Now, both attributes had been stuck at 19 for a while. Jack speculated that reaching 20 would bring new surprises. However, increasing these attributes was costly. Each point below 20 required 2 system coins. This was why Jack proposed the lunch for shooting practice trade with Angela. Until he accumulated 4 system coins to boost both attributes to 20, he needed to improve his skills through diligent practice. Being a police officer in Los Angeles, competent skills in handgun and rifle shooting were essential. "Let me see your shooting skills first," Angela said after work, bringing Jack to the police station's underground shooting range. Jack retrieved the department-issued Glock 22 from his holster, donned protective goggles and earmuffs, assumed a proper stance, and emptied the magazine into a fixed target 10 meters away. "So, what exactly do you need me to teach you?" Angela asked, examining the target paper filled with tightly grouped bullet holes around the center. "At least half the officers here don't shoot as well as you." Jack quickly explained, "Hannah says my shooting skills are good for the range but inadequate for real-life scenarios. I want to perform better when facing armed criminals." Angela nodded. "I understand what you need. I can train you, but you must realize that until you fire your first shot in a real situation, you can't imagine what you'll face. Now, forget everything your academy instructors taught you. Ditch the earmuffs and goggles, and let's start practicing." By 6:30 p.m., when Jack drove his newly bought used Chevrolet back to Hannah's place, his hearing had not fully recovered. Though the Glock wasn't exceptionally loud, firing 5 magazines in the echoing underground range left him dazed. After all, the standard Glock magazine held 15 rounds. However, it was a productive day. Jack was confident that mastering the essence of American quick-draw shooting would elevate his handgun skills to proficient. Entering the house, Jack found Hannah lounging on the couch, her long legs bare, wearing only a t-shirt that reached her knees, and munching on chips while watching TV. Seeing Jack, Hannah tossed the chips aside, shrieked, and jumped onto his back. "I'm starving. Make sweet and sour ribs and mapo tofu." Jack had to admit that Hannah, often hanging on him like a human weight, contributed significantly to his rapid physical growth. This farm girl from Texas, ever since meeting Jack through Zoe, treated him like a rare treasure, always hanging around him like a lioness eyeing a lion king. As their interactions increased, she became more comfortable with Jack. After an incident during sit-ups where they had some physical contact, she became increasingly bold and affectionate. Initially, Jack thought she was just an open girl and intended to keep his distance. However, one day Zoe curiously asked how he managed to get close to Hannah, knowing that Hannah had mild androphobia. She would always wash her hands vigorously after any contact with male suspects or colleagues. Jack was surprised and tentatively asked Hannah about it. She casually attributed it to past experiences. Given Americans' extreme sensitivity to personal privacy, he didn't press further. Thus, their peculiar relationship continued. Hannah ignored the feelings between Jack and Zoe, seizing any chance to be close to Jack. Zoe, before confessing her feelings to Jack, also ignored Hannah's advances. Jack, caught in the middle, found the situation both painful and pleasurable. After 40 minutes, dinner was ready. Hannah, eating and smiling like a cat who caught a canary, had invested in a closed kitchen, a new stove, an exhaust hood, and a luxurious Chinese-made fridge just for Jack's daily 3 meals. "Want to join me at the bar tonight? John, Lucy, and I are meeting up," Jack asked after putting the dishes in the dishwasher. "Sure, I'll drive," Hannah replied happily, grabbing her car keys and dragging Jack out the door. Hannah's car was quite unique, a yellow and white striped Mustang, a classic American muscle car. They arrived at the bar and found John and Lucy already there. "John, you don't look too good." Jack grabbed 4 Budweisers from the bar and handed them out, showing concern for John. Chapter 5, No One Dislikes Gossip. John, looking sad, recounted his day's experience. That morning during patrol, he responded to a domestic dispute call. Upon arrival, he found a couple with a huge size difference arguing. The 120-kilogram husband confided in John that his petite wife, who appeared to weigh no more than 50 kilograms, was abusing him. Amused, John calmed the husband and didn't think much of it, leaving after a simple mediation. However, in the afternoon, John and his training officer, Talia Bishop, received another call from the same address. They arrived just in time to see the seemingly delicate wife stabbing her burly husband in the neck with an ice pick. By the time they subdued her, the husband had died from blood loss. John was visibly shaken. I held his neck, but there was nothing I could do. I just felt his life slipping away, even though we had just talked not long ago. I thought I was prepared for this, but clearly, I wasn't. Jack put an arm around John's shoulders and smiled. "I thought you might feel guilty for not helping or blame yourself for his death. If that were the case, I'd have to give you a lot of comforting advice and convince you it wasn't your fault. I'm glad you don't feel that way. I lost my parents while I was in a coma and woke up days later. So, all I can say is, let time heal everything." John gratefully hugged Jack's shoulders tightly. "Buddy, thanks. Sometimes you make me feel like I'm talking to an old friend, not someone just 3 years older than my son." Jack cast a peculiar glance at the 2 girls. "Is this old guy trying to take advantage of me?" The girls laughed heartily. "What about you?" Jack pointed his beer bottle at Lucy. "How was your first day? Did Officer Bradford give you a hard time?" Caught off guard, Lucy hesitated, looking conflicted before finally speaking. "Officer Bradford doesn't seem to be targeting me on purpose. I think he's a soft-hearted person." Hannah nodded. "He is tough on the outside but kind inside. If you think he's being hard on you, it's only because he doesn't want to let any unqualified rookies slip through. Being a street patrol officer in Los Angeles is very dangerous. Lacking skills can cost you your life. So, Lucy, how did you find out he's a good person? You look so resentful this morning." Jack smirked mischievously. Lucy hesitated for a long time before speaking uncertainly. "I'm not sure if this is private, but I hope it doesn't go beyond us 4. We swear." Everyone loves gossip, and the 3 others raised their fingers in unison. "Today, while arresting a street dealer, we encountered a female vagrant who was clearly an addict. Bradford talked to her briefly, then gave her all the cash he had. When we got back in the car, I asked him about it, and he said she was his wife who had been missing for over a year. He looked very sad. "Oh my God," Hannah gasped, covering her mouth. "That must be Isabella." Seeing everyone's eyes on her, Hannah continued, "Tim Bradford's wife is named Isabella. She was an undercover DEA agent who became addicted during a mission and left home over a year ago. She warned Lucy seriously, if Tim doesn't bring it up, don't mention it. The whole precinct has been discreetly helping look for Isabella, but Tim thinks he's kept it a secret." Lucy nodded earnestly, and everyone turned to Jack, who was examining his beer bottle. "What? Why are you all looking at me?" Jack pretended to be clueless. "Don't you think you should share your day?" "We all did," Lucy said, slapping the table. Jack sighed. "Angela threatened me not to tell anyone unless you buy the next round." "Miss, for more Budweisers," John immediately called to the nearby waitress. Jack took a sip and began, "Today, we arrested a pair of lesbians. And Angela sprayed an entire can of disinfectant, then threatened to kill me if I told anyone." John and Lucy laughed uproariously, while Hannah grabbed Jack's neck, eyes gleaming with menace. "You're already calling her Angela. You two are getting close." Jack hurriedly signaled Hannah to mind the setting and protested, "Didn't you say it was inconvenient with our schedules and told me to get close to Angela so she could teach me shooting? Now I have to prepare breakfast for 2 and lunch for 3 every day." Exchanging a glance with John, Lucy asked, intrigued, "So, what's the relationship between you two?" Jack quickly raised his hand to clarify, "Hannah and I were friends before. Now she's my landlord, and I cook for her in exchange for rent." "Humph." Hannah gave him a disdainful look. "LAPD doesn't allow workplace romances. If it happens, one person must transfer to another department or precinct, and rookies might even be fired. But I'm already applying to the FBI. Once I leave LAPD, I'll pursue Jack. He's mine, I like him." Jack choked on his drink, missing John and Lucy's instant crestfallen expressions. After the gathering, Hannah finally noticed the awkward atmosphere at the end and asked Jack in the passenger seat, "Are John and Lucy?" Jack nodded. "Yes, they got together in the last 2 months of the academy, thinking they'd be fine after graduation. But Zoe chose them both for Wilshire." Hannah wrinkled her cute nose and muttered, "Why is there always such an age gap?" Jack scratched his head, not daring to respond. After a moment of silence, Jack broke the awkwardness. "I saw Rick Hunter and D.D. McCall's names on the police department's honor wall today. Do you know them?" Chapter 6, Wanted Notice. Hannah nodded. Detective Hunter and Detective McCall were quite the figures in the LAPD during the 80s and 90s. "Of course, I know them. Especially Detective McCall, as one of the few outstanding female detectives in a male-dominated era, she's been an idol for all of us female officers. They live on Maryland Street. Do you know them?" She suddenly turned to look at Jack. "Know them?" Jack thought. In his previous life, nearly everyone born in the 70s and 80s in series knew this duo. Hunter, the American TV show, was one of the first shows most series families watched after getting their first TV. They live together. You mean they're married? Jack keenly sensed something was off. In his past life, he vividly remembered that the beautiful Dee had married some random doctor, which had frustrated countless series viewers, and made Jack a lifelong critic of TV show writers. Of course, they've been married for over a decade now. They're also the most envied couple at the LAPD. The department invites them to anniversary events every year. Jack breathed a sigh of relief and leaned back in the passenger seat. If Hunter and Dee's relationship could deviate from the original storyline, he felt more confident in saving Zoe's fate. They arrived home soon after, and as Jack was about to go upstairs to sleep, he remembered something and called out, "Hannah, could you take me to visit Detective Hunter and Detective McCall sometime?" Hannah nodded in confusion but didn't ask further questions. The next day, in the briefing room. Duty Commander Wade Gray entered the bustling briefing room with a somber face, and the originally chattering officers immediately fell silent. Commander Gray, with his somewhat middle-aged and overweight figure, looked particularly grim today. He took out a stack of A4 papers, distributed them one by one to everyone, and then said loudly, "This is an internal wanted notice for Lance Selby. He violated parole yesterday. If the danger level is rated from 1 to 10, this guy's at 12. This man previously attempted murder with a carpenter's hammer and was sentenced to 5 years in prison. Whoever brings him in from the streets will receive heartfelt thanks from the higher-ups and 2 tickets to Sunday's Super Bowl. Hearing the murmurs below, Commander Gray paused and scanned the room with a stern gaze. Be aware, intelligence indicates he might have accomplices and could be armed with automatic weapons. Be extremely cautious. The wanted notice showed a disheveled white man, around 35 years old, with a plain appearance but notable bulging eyes. Jack and Angela headed to the armory, where Angela indicated that besides the usual Ithaca 12 shotgun, Jack should also take 2 M16 rifles. After checking the firearms, Angela asked, "How's your rifle shooting?" Jack carefully placed the equipment in the trunk and replied, "About the same as my handgun skills. Excellent scores using iron sights at 100 meters. As they drove off, Jack, noticing Angela had no further instructions, asked, "Aren't we going to try and find the fugitive?" Angela, confident, replied, "The other 2 teams will actively search for clues. We just need to monitor internal communications. Capturing such a dangerous criminal isn't a solo job, they'll definitely call for backup." Angela seemed more concerned about her lunch than the fugitive. "What are we having for lunch today? Is it the same fried dish from yesterday? I really liked it." Jack, thinking she was a foodie, replied honestly, "I originally made enough scallion oil noodles for 3 people this morning, but Hannah took most of it. I have some left for you, along with rice, garlic broccoli, and fried pork chops. We'll need to find a place with a microwave to heat it up." "No problem, leave that to me. I know where we can find a microwave." Angela tilted her head and looked at him curiously. "Jack, are you really only 21? Jack sighed, "If you were forced to live alone at 18, supporting yourself with a small grocery store left by your parents while saving for college, you'd learn to cook and take care of yourself too. In fact, I've always wondered why, when cooking tutorials are readily available online, and cooking for yourself saves money and satisfies your taste buds, young people in this country still prefer just eating burgers." Angela laughed, "I guess that's why I doubt your age. Your behavior and mindset seem more like those born in the disco era, like old-timers." Jack nodded in agreement. "Indeed, compared to Lucy, I have more in common with John." He was eager to solidify his mature persona to avoid being exposed as a time traveler. Although Americans might not have this concept, the priest still performed exorcisms, and being suspected of demonic possession would be even more troublesome. Angela looked at the young man driving seriously and was momentarily distracted by his overly handsome face. "What's up?" After a while of silence, Jack glanced at her. "Nothing, I was just thinking how much easier our job would be if all young people in this country were as mature and disciplined as you." Angela tried to hide her wandering thoughts, touching her slightly warm cheeks. The morning patrol was quite relaxed. They only issued 2 traffic tickets, and it was already noon. Returning to the lunch spot from yesterday, Angela eagerly took the large lunch box to a nearby convenience store to heat the food, while Jack bought 2 bottles of Coke. Just as he sat down, 2 other rookie teams arrived. "Hey, John, Lucy, any news on the fugitive?" Lucy shook her head, while John, looking excited, couldn't wait to sit down and said, "We found an accomplice of Lance Selby, named Dallas Nguyen. He owns a registered gym. We're planning to check it out after lunch." Jack nodded. "If there's any news, make sure to update the internal channel. This guy is extremely dangerous, not someone 1 or 2 teams can handle." After lunch, Jack and Angela continued their patrol. The daily routine of a patrol officer was indeed monotonous. In fact, even in his previous life in the USA, despite rampant gun violence and crime, more than half of frontline officers never fired their guns throughout their careers. Of course, in this strange TV drama world, Jack never expected to live a peaceful life. A mere street patrol officer wasn't the career end he had planned for himself. Maybe the FBI would be a good option. The higher you go, the more freedom, but also the greater the risk. Chapter 7, First Blood. In shows like The Rookie, which are more comedic, several major characters have died. In other shows stitched into this world, especially those with big scenes, even more characters meet their end. Moreover, Jack was curious. Since the beauty of women in this world was several notches above their counterparts in the original series, it would be a shame not to see some famous ones, like the long-legged beauty from the Jewish nation alongside the Punisher. Of course, it's too early to talk about that now. Currently, he's just a small LAPD patrol officer. Besides being good-looking, he has no connections and his pockets are cleaner than his face. But with the system, he believed that one day, he'd get there. Around 3 in the afternoon, a call for additional police support came through the police radio. Jack and Angela perked up. Shortly after, John's communication came through their private channel. They had caught the accomplice, Dallas Nguyen, who had revealed Lance Selby's whereabouts. He was currently hiding in a house at 1350 Zhongguan Street. Lucy and Tim reported that their patrol car was closest to the suspect's location and would arrive first. In the passenger seat, Angela immediately informed the command center that they were heading to the location. Meanwhile, Jack turned on the lights and siren, checked the rearview mirror for cars, lightly tapped the brake, sharply turned the wheel, and accelerated. 3 minutes away from their destination, the radio became chaotic. Lucy and Tim, who had arrived first, attempted to block Selby's escape route by going around to the back alley of the target house. Unexpectedly, they encountered Selby and another accomplice, both armed with automatic weapons, who opened fire on their patrol car. Lucy and Tim tried to return fire, but their handguns couldn't suppress the firepower of the two M4A1s. Tim was shot and fell. Hearing Lucy's panicked voice over the radio, Jack gritted his teeth and floored the gas pedal, further accelerating. Angela started checking the two M16 assault rifles they had retrieved from the trunk. Turning a corner, they heard the rotor blades of a police helicopter overhead. Over the radio, Officer Talia Bishop reported that one suspect was apprehended and the main suspect, Selby, was fleeing towards the Clinton Street residential area. Jack turned onto Clinton Street, searching for the target. Suddenly, a figure dashed out from a backyard, saw the approaching police car with its siren blaring, and opened fire. The front windshield shattered, and a bullet whizzed past Jack's ear, lodging into the seat's headrest. Fuck. Feeling the adrenaline surge, Jack grabbed the M16 Angela had checked, braced it against the steering wheel, and fired 3 short bursts through the front window at the fleeing suspect. Meanwhile, Angela's gunfire echoed in his ears. Seeing Selby stumble a few steps and disappear around a corner, Jack and Angela jumped out of the car and began the chase on foot. They turned the corner and saw John confronting Selby on a pedestrian path near a neighborhood park. Selby, now out of ammo for his M4A1, had a Browning M1911 pressed against a female bystander's head. Seeing that Selby's attention was entirely focused on John, Angela signaled Jack to follow her. They moved to the right, using tall palm trees for cover. Selby, agitated, alternated between pointing the gun at the hostage's head and at John, who was trying to talk him down. Angela turned to Jack and whispered, "Are you sure your rifle marksmanship is excellent?" Jack understood immediately, shouldering the M16. "We're less than 20 meters away. I can hit his head no problem." Angela set up her gun as well, her voice cold. "Fire when he points at John again. I'll aim for his head, you for his wrist. Watch your angles, don't hit the hostage." No sooner had she finished speaking than Selby pointed the M1911 at John again. 2 shots rang out simultaneously. A cloud of blood mist erupted from Selby's head and wrist as he fell to the ground. Amid the hostage's screams, the 3 officers rushed forward. John kindly shielded the female bystander from seeing the body, gently comforting her. Angela kicked the handgun away, while Jack, suppressing his discomfort, examined the body. Selby's wrist was shattered, barely hanging on by a strip of flesh, and half of his head was blown open, spilling brain matter. In reality, rifle bullets are far more powerful than depicted in movies. Jack struggled to suppress his urge to vomit, forcing himself to keep looking. He needed to remember this scene. This was a process he had to adapt to. In the future, he might encounter many more scenes like this. This wasn't the peaceful world he came from. He had to become ruthless and merciless in dealing with criminals. Noticing Jack's discomfort, Angela pushed him aside, looking him in the eye and asked loudly, "Rookie, are you okay?" Jack forced a stiff smile. "I'm fine, don't worry. Since I chose this job, I knew this day would come. Different fates for different people." Jack killed a suspect and was given 3 days of administrative leave and arranged for psychological counseling by the department. Meanwhile, John, in his haste to rescue Lucy and Tim, left his instructor, Officer Bishop, to deal with Selby's accomplice alone, nearly causing her to be ambushed. Commander Gray was furious when he found out. If not for Zoe's support, John might have been kicked out of the department. John is a top graduate from the University of Pennsylvania and worked as a building contractor for 20 years. Anyone can see his abilities are undeniable. His academy performance was also excellent. I really don't understand where Commander Gray's bias against him comes from. After a fierce session, Jack held a limp Zoe, his hand playfully tapping her firm buttocks, talking about the day's events. "Stop it, it tickles," Zoe giggled, swatting away his hand, then pondered for a moment. "I recruited John and you because of your personalities, hoping you could bring some changes to the Wilshire division. As for Commander Gray, he probably sees another side of himself in John, causing a subconscious resistance. I heard Commander Gray has actually completed his 20 years of service and is eligible for a full pension. His family wants him to retire early, but he seems to be full of energy every day. So, Commander Gray is also dealing with his own midlife crisis in a different way. No wonder." Jack muttered to himself, suddenly understanding. Chapter 8, Every Hero Has a Flaw. Just as Jack was about to continue, Zoe gently pushed him away and asked, puzzled, "Are you sure you're okay? Today was your first time shooting and killing a suspect, yet you're here worrying about John." "My heart and actions are as clear as a mirror, everything I do is for justice." Zoe, not understanding the Chinese, suppressed the tingling in her body and asked, "What did you just say?" Jack sighed, propping his head up with one hand and looking at Zoe. "Don't worry. Apart from the disgusting scene after shooting, which made me very uncomfortable, my resolve in being a police officer hasn't wavered at all. If it happens again, I'll pull the trigger even more decisively. God just used my finger to deliver a righteous judgment. It was that scumbag Selby who forced himself into a dead end." Zoe rubbed her forehead. "When you talk to the psychologist about this tomorrow, don't say it like that. I'm afraid they'll write down something about you possibly abusing your power. Every year, many officers who are too convinced of their own righteousness and act recklessly are dismissed." Jack nodded but remained skeptical. Having watched many TV shows, he thought of Dexter and wondered if there really was a Dexter Morgan working at the Miami Metro Police Department. If given the chance, he would like to find out. What truly unsettled him was the bullet that grazed his ear today. When adrenaline surged, he felt no fear or panic. Instead, an uncontrollable excitement spread through his body. He could clearly recall the scene, grabbing the M16 calmly in the car, returning fire, pursuing on foot, sneaking behind the tree, and pulling the trigger steadily with Angela's permission. When the criminal's head burst into a cloud of blood, every cell in his body seemed to cheer. This feeling of anger being released lasted until he broke his routine and came to Zoe's house. Maybe Zoe thought Jack sought her out for comfort after his first kill, but only Jack knew that if he hadn't come to see Zoe, he might have impulsively gone out at night to hunt down gang members. The original owner of this body must have had some serious issues. What kind of antisocial personality disorder is this? A normal person under an adrenaline rush should experience tunnel vision, rapid breathing, trembling legs, and shaky hands while shooting, not this level of excitement. Does this mean he will need to find a girl to vent his emotions after every dangerous encounter? What if he's surrounded by men? Would the psychologist treat this condition? Psychologist Maureen Cahill had long black hair, black eyes, thin lips contrary to Western beauty standards, and high cheekbones, giving her a unique intellectual charm. Jack couldn't remember which TV show featured this psychologist, but he recognized the actress's face. She was Jordana Brewster, who played Mia in the Fast and Furious series. He remembered the actress had lost a lot of weight after having 2 kids, becoming unrecognizable. However, the Maureen Cahill in front of him looked around 30, her face still full of collagen, and her beauty was captivating. Noticing someone's gaze, Dr. Cahill, who was reading through files, looked up puzzled. Jack quickly looked away, observing the room instead. The room was small and simply furnished. A desk backed by large floor-to-ceiling windows faced the sofa where Jack sat. A large coffee table sat in front of the sofa, and 2 abstract paintings hung on the left wall. On the other side was a glass cabinet with several sets of glass and ceramic tea sets. A vase with various kinds of roses sat on the desk, suggesting that this beautiful psychologist had more than one admirer. After the incident with Selby, the police union mandated psychological intervention for rookie officers. So, early this morning, Jack had arrived at the EAP counseling center. Although he felt fine, he didn't want to seem unique. Unexpectedly, he saw a familiar face. "Can I call you Jack?" "You can call me Maureen." "I prefer a more casual atmosphere," Dr. Cahill said, adjusting her gold-rimmed glasses with a graceful motion after finishing reading Jack's thin file. Jack's mental alarm bells rang. In his past life, psychology wasn't as magical as portrayed in TV shows, but in this world, who knew? After all, in his past life, LAPD rookies weren't known to shoot armed suspects in the head on their second day. "Hello, Maureen. Please call me Jack. Forgive my rudeness, but this is the first time I've seen such a beautiful psychologist." Maureen chuckled softly and asked, "So, have you seen many psychologists?" Jack scratched his head awkwardly, like a shy big boy. "No, you're the first psychologist I've met." I didn't expect someone as beautiful as you two." Feeling like he was making it worse, Jack decided to stop talking. Fortunately, Maureen didn't seem to mind. Instead, she took out a tea set and asked, "Do you drink tea?" "I prefer a nice capricious green tea." Jack's eyes lit up. Taking the tea caddy Maureen handed him, he opened it and found it contained Biluacan from Jiangnan in Carries. Memory stirred within him. "May I try?" "This set is meant for oolong tea and isn't quite right for this green tea." Maureen, surprised, gestured for Jack to proceed, pulling up a chair to sit at the coffee table, watching him with interest. Jack didn't hold back. He opened the cabinet, took out 2 glass cups and a cloisonné teapot, poured hot water into the teapot, and expertly rinsed the cups before adding the tea leaves. Once the water in the teapot cooled slightly, he poured about 1/4 of a cup into each cup to let the tea leaves steep. Then, he repeatedly poured water high into the cups to make the leaves dance up and down. Finally, he filled each cup to about 70%. Maureen lifted her glass, the steam carrying the aroma instantly invigorating her. She couldn't help but let out a low exclamation, her eyes filled with surprise as she looked at Jack. Watching the spiral-shaped tea leaves settle at the bottom, Jack took a sip and sighed, "Good tea." High-end capricious green tea could be found in Chinatown, but the price was usually higher than gold, something his poverty couldn't afford. Chapter 9, Visiting the Sick. "It seems I've wasted quite a bit of precious tea before," Maureen said with a light laugh, her tone somewhat self-deprecating. "My father is half capricious. I only learned a bit from him when I was young," Jack explained, knowing that his current appearance didn't reveal much of his capricious heritage. Surprisingly, Maureen didn't ask about the details of yesterday's incident or delve into Jack's background. Instead, they chatted like friends about their hobbies and interests, leaving Jack's prepared explanations unused. Leaving the EAP counseling center, Jack was bewildered. How did he suddenly gain a psychologist friend and even invite her over to his place tomorrow? This psychologist felt quite mysterious. Driving home, Jack thought about whether he should read some psychology books to boost his psychology skills. Entering the house, he saw Hannah playing on the console in front of the TV. Seeing Jack come in, Hannah turned off the PlayStation, ran up, hugged his arm, and looked up at him without speaking, her big eyes filled with worry. Jack patted her head and smiled reassuringly. "I'm fine. Now, I might be even better than you. You've been a patrol officer for 3 years and never fired a shot." Hannah made a face. "You still need to get through your rookie year first. I'll soon be a sergeant." "Impressive. Has the FBI responded to your application yet?" "Not yet. They said it might take a year," Hannah said, her face falling. "Let's work hard together. I plan to re-enroll in community college in a few days to finish the remaining 2 years. They say having a bachelor's degree can get you close to a $100,000 annual salary. Oh, and later we need to go to the Huazhang supermarket in Chinatown to buy groceries. We'll have a guest tomorrow, the psychologist I met today." "Humph. I bet it's another pretty lady, right?" "Huh, she's just average, far from as pretty as you." In the evening, Jack and Hannah visited Tim Bradford at Central Hospital, where they met Dr. Gray. Dr. Gray, who seemed to have a special memory for handsome men, immediately recognized Jack. Hearing that he was now an LAPD officer and a colleague of Tim, she warmly explained the surgery situation. Tim's luck was ambiguous. He tried to block an escape route only to run into Selby and get shot immediately. Lucy, in an effort to rescue him, left cover, but fortunately, John and others arrived in time, forcing Selby to abandon the attack. At Central Hospital, they found that the bullet had passed through his soft body armor but didn't tumble, lodging between his heart and lungs, missing all major blood vessels and critical areas. Aside from some blood loss, he was expected to be discharged in 3 days. Entering the hospital room, they found Tim energetically arguing with a nurse. Hannah cheerfully took a selfie with him. Tim, who looked more weathered than John, was actually not yet 40. Despite his stern and rigid demeanor, he was a warm-hearted guy. Jack felt that Tim's current haggard appearance was due more to his crumbling young family than the gunshot wound. Anyone with a runaway addict wife would have a hard time. After bidding Tim goodbye, Jack resolved to help him whenever possible. Building good relationships with colleagues was crucial, especially in a job like policing that required teamwork. Unlike Hannah's determination to join the FBI, Jack didn't have a clear goal yet. With his low skill levels on the system panel, he planned to develop within the LAPD for 2 years while completing his college degree. Maureen's visit the next day was a surprise. She came with Zoe, revealing that they were close friends and college classmates. Seeing the two beautiful women chatting and laughing in the living room, Jack felt a bit overwhelmed. Thankfully, Hannah wasn't home today, or 3 women would have been quite the scene. Lunch was a simple 4 dishes and a soup: oyster sauce kale, tomato scrambled eggs, stuffed peppers, broccoli and superior soup, and ham and mushroom thick soup, with the usual rice as the main dish. Maureen, who liked Caricyon culture, was not as proficient with chopsticks as Zoe, who had eaten Jack's cooking for 2 years. However, Maureen highly praised Jack's cooking, proving that not all Americans preferred the overly sweet Americanized Chinese dishes like General Tso's chicken. "So, is our monthly appointment cancelled?" Jack asked Zoe when they had a moment alone. Zoe looked stunning today, whether it was due to her healing skills or Jack's care. She cupped Jack's face and gave him a gentle kiss. "No, it's not cancelled. The agreement continues. But since you broke it once, I get a turn too. It's only fair. Don't worry. Maureen is my best friend. I've talked to her about you before. After she met you yesterday, she called me. I didn't expect it to be such a coincidence, like it was arranged by God." After sending off the 2 beauties, Jack sat on the sofa, deep in thought. If Zoe said Maureen could be trusted, maybe he should consider talking to Maureen about his physical condition. He couldn't figure out if the adrenaline-fueled excitement was due to the original owner of the body, a hidden personality from his previous life, or even a side effect of the transmigration. This problem needed solving. The LAPD was a dangerous job, and he didn't want to risk becoming a vigilante if Zoe wasn't around to calm him down. Maybe he could talk to Hannah. But the thought of Hannah made his head hurt. She often threw herself at him, leaving Jack unsure how to handle her advances. In his previous life, he had romantic experiences but always adhered to principles of not sleeping without feelings, not actively hurting others, and not two-timing. Feeling he was close to being despised as a scumbag, Jack sighed and dismissed these worries. He opened the system in his mind, remembering he had a choice to make. After killing Selby, he had gained 50 experience points. Adding the points from issuing traffic tickets and arresting a pair of lesbians, his experience bar had surpassed 100. He now had 6 experience points and 2 system coins. Should he increase his mental strength or his physical strength first? After some hesitation, considering the learning skill bonuses from mental strength, he decided to go with mental strength and confirmed his choice. Chapter 10, An Unpleasant Arrest. There was no pain, no sudden enlightenment. It was as if a pane of frosted glass had been removed from Jack's vision, making the world instantly clearer. This was the best metaphor he could think of. The smells in the air, the sounds from the street outside, and every corner of the room could be discerned and observed clearly if he focused. Jack took a sip of the cool water from the table, frowning slightly. Despite the high-end water filter installed in Hannah's house, and the water having been boiled, his taste buds told him the filter cartridge needed replacing. This reminded Jack of a movie he had seen in his previous life, where the protagonist swallowed a small pill called NZT-48, which greatly enhanced his senses and intelligence, making him almost omnipotent. Jack's current state felt very similar. Excited, he ran up to the attic and pulled out a calculus problem from his old college textbooks that had troubled him for a long time. He started writing and solving it. 10 minutes later, Jack threw down the pen, giving up in frustration. All right, what he didn't know before, he still didn't know. Improving mental strength didn't equate to increasing IQ. It seemed he wouldn't conquer the mountain of mathematics in this lifetime. 3 days of administrative leave ended, and Jack returned to the police station, continuing his routine of clocking in for work, practicing shooting after hours, and occasionally observing John and Lucy's drama. Their underground romance was clearly on the rocks. Finally, one night about a month later, Jack, who had been dragged out for drinks, witnessed their official breakup. If it's not working, why not take a break until your rookie period ends? One of you could apply to transfer to another precinct, Jack suggested, unable to stand their melodrama. Their looks of incredulity made him shrug. Forget I said anything. Let's drink. After finishing a bottle of Budweiser, Jack was about to get up and grab a few more when he suddenly heard a rapid alarm from the herbal medicine shop across the street. 3 guys with zombie face paint burst out of the shop. Shit, LAPD, freeze. Jack was the first to draw his Glock and rush out of the bar, with John and Lucy close behind. The 3 robbers, shocked to see the police right outside, bolted. Within 200 meters, John and Lucy had each apprehended one, while the third, clutching a cash box, fled into a subway entrance. Jack called out to the others and followed him, not wanting to miss out on the experience points. A subway train happened to be arriving. The panicked robber dashed inside, and Jack managed to squeeze in just as the doors closed, shouting LAPD to announce his identity while continuing the pursuit. Though the train wasn't crowded, the confined space made Jack wary of injuring bystanders. Seeing that the robber wasn't armed, he holstered his Glock, intending to subdue him barehanded. After chasing through several carriages, the robber, exhausted, tripped and fell, sending the cash bag flying to the feet of a frail-looking white man near the door. Jack stepped on the robber's coccyx, handcuffed him, and pulled him up just as the train arrived at the next station. Looking up, he saw the cash bag and the white man had vanished. I can't imagine someone being dumb enough to steal loot right in front of a cop. Are they not afraid of going to jail? Jack discussed this with Angela the next day at work, unable to figure it out. Angela seemed unfazed. A fool or someone desperate. With the economy bad these past few years, I've heard Manhattan Beach is almost overrun by homeless people. Jack scoffed. Since his mental strength had surpassed 20, his observational skills had greatly improved. From his brief glimpse, the white man who took the money didn't look like a down-and-out homeless person. After dropping the robber off at the station, he had submitted relevant information to the detective unit. With the subway surveillance footage, they should soon find out more. Sure enough, after patrolling for just a few rounds and issuing a single ticket, the command center sent over the address of the suspect who took the stolen money. The cash bag was the day's takings from the herbal medicine shop, with no bills larger than $5, totaling less than $2,000. Naturally, the detective unit wasn't eager to take on the task. Given Jack's earlier request, they handed it over to him. Originally, it was a pleasant surprise to arrest 3 small-time thieves after a night of drinking, earning some easy experience points. However, losing the key evidence under his nose had led to Commander Gray publicly mocking him in the morning briefing. Although the daily ridicule of the rookies was common and usually good-natured, Jack, as the LAPD's rising star, still had his pride. Following the address from the command center, Jack parked in front of a white 2-story house, noting the children's bicycle leaning against the porch wall, making him frown. Angela signaled Jack to cover her, climbed the steps, and knocked forcefully on the door. LAPD, open up. The frail white man emerged from inside, hands raised, looking fearful. I see you. Don't make me break down the door. Angela shouted. The man hurried to open the door. I'm sorry, I'm very sorry. Angela entered first, drawing her gun and pointing it at him. Hands up. Following close behind, Jack sidestepped Angela's line of fire, moving behind the man. Hands on your head, fingers interlaced. The men complied, allowing Jack to search him thoroughly. Finding no weapons, Jack shook his head at Angela, who holstered her gun. "Where's the money you took?" Jack asked, standing next to him. "I swear I wanted to return it." "The money." I. The men, flustered, led them to the living room, where the cash bag sat on the table. "Did you use any of the cash?" Angela demanded. Jack checked the bag, confirming it was the same loose bills from the herbal medicine shop. "I bought some necessities and paid the water bill." "I'm sorry, I'll repay it all." The man stammered, tears welling up in his eyes. "Life has been tough. My wife died last year, and I recently lost my job. I've never even gotten a parking ticket before." Jack, feeling sympathetic, took out his handcuffs, ready to arrest him. His anger at the men for stealing had vanished, seeing him as someone driven to desperation. Suddenly, a child's voice called from the stairs, "Daddy." Turning, Jack saw a 5 or 6-year-old boy standing there, looking at them in confusion. The men froze, then shouted, "Jacob, go back to your room." Jack quietly returned the handcuffs to his belt and interrupted, "It's all right. Let him come here." At the man's call, the boy ran into his father's arms. The men looked at Jack in despair. "What will happen to my son?" Angela explained, "Child Protective Services will come to take your son." "Do you have any relatives in the city who can take him?" "Yes, my wife's sister," the men said, eyes filled with helplessness. "Provide her contact information. We'll ensure CPS can reach her," Angela continued. "But you need to cooperate with us now. Let's not make your son see you in handcuffs." Jack gestured for the men to follow. "Please, don't do this. I beg you." The men pleaded. "Sorry, you need to say goodbye to your son," Angela said firmly. Watching the father and son embrace and cry, Jack felt a pang of sorrow. If he were a detective, maybe he could. Leading the men out, Jack heard the boy's heart-wrenching cries as Angela comforted him. Outside, the man was already in tears, filled with regret. "What have I done? I've ruined everything." To those who enjoyed this chapter, please remember to bookmark it. I'm still working on improving my writing speed and have a bit of a backlog. Your support is greatly appreciated. Chapter 11, Parking Lot Showdown. "Are you all right?" Angela handed Jack a cup of coffee. Jack shook his head as he took the coffee. "It's really awful to forcibly take someone away from their child. I checked, and this guy really didn't have any record. His actions yesterday were just a momentary lapse. Before this, he was an honest and decent person." Angela shrugged. "I never said being a patrol officer was easy, either physically or mentally. He might have been a good person once, but that doesn't change the fact that he committed a crime." Jack quickly finished his coffee and shrugged. "Maybe. Poor kid, damn world." However, he had an idea forming in his mind. That afternoon, everyone was summoned back to the station. While Jack and Angela had been arresting a father in the morning, John and Officer Talia Bishop had captured a fugitive who had escaped from court. This fugitive had fled to attend his daughter's coming-of-age ceremony. John, being the good guy, didn't arrest him in front of the crowd, which made the fugitive grateful enough to provide a significant drug trafficking tip. Commander Gray gathered everyone in the briefing room to plan the operation. The deal will take place at 3 p.m. in the parking lot behind Stone Home Goods on Sunset Boulevard. A car carrying 80 kilograms of cocaine will arrive from Mexico and park there. Lucy, taking notes, raised a question. "So, the drug dealers are meeting in broad daylight in a parking lot?" Tim, experienced, explained, "A department store parking lot is actually a great choice. Busy traffic, open exits, and plenty of people make it the perfect cover." Commander Gray continued, "The transaction process is simple. The driver will leave the car with the keys inside. The buyer will then enter the car and drive off. The whole thing takes less than a minute. According to the informant, the drugs are hidden in a red Honda Civic with Nevada plates. There are only 2 exits from the parking lot. Here's the plan." After hearing the assignments, Jack, who hadn't been mentioned, raised his hand. "What about me?" Commander Gray pointed at him. "You'll follow me in a patrol car. I'll be undercover in the parking lot, and you'll provide backup. At 2:55 p.m., Jack parked his patrol car behind Commander Gray's old Buick, pretending to issue a ticket. Gray, using binoculars, surveyed the parking lot, then picked up his radio. The buyers have arrived in a blue Dodge Ram with 3 Latino suspects inside. No sign of the red Honda Civic yet. John and Lucy, along with another team of Hannah and Angela, hiding in nearby alleys, confirmed their readiness. 5 minutes later, a red Honda Civic with Nevada plates drove into the parking lot. A man wearing a wool hat got out and walked quickly toward an empty Toyota pickup on the other side. At the same time, a man from the blue Dodge Ram entered the Civic, started it, and prepared to leave. Go. At Commander Gray's command, 2 police cars, sirens blaring, blocked the parking lot exits. Hannah and Angela's car emerged from the underground parking, trapping the wool hat man in place. Meanwhile, the Civic, loaded with drugs, tried to escape over the landscaping. Lucy and Tim's car sped after it. Commander Gray started his Buick and followed the Dodge Ram, with Jack right behind him. The Ram, blocked by John and Talia Bishop's car, had a passenger jump out, using parked cars for cover, and started firing a semi-automatic rifle at them. The Ram then screeched in a tight turn, its tires squealing. With a loud crash, it rammed into Gray's Buick, deploying the airbags and knocking Gray unconscious. The driver of the Ram, looking crazed, got out with an AK-47, aiming at the Buick's driver's seat. Seeing this from 20 meters away, Jack was terrified. There was no time to grab the M16 from the back seat or even to get out of the car. He kicked the door open, drew his Glock, and aimed at the drug dealer. Time seemed to stand still. The sound of gunfire and shouts from the nearby shootout with the other suspect felt distant. Under the influence of adrenaline, Jack's focus had never been sharper. The suspect's expression was magnified in the Glock's sights, every detail of his bloodshot eyes visible. As the suspect raised his AK, Jack fired, emptying his magazine in rapid succession. Dropping the empty magazine and inserting a new one as he approached, Jack saw the suspect was already dead. Kicking the AK aside, he moved toward the other suspect still resisting arrest, shouting, "Drop your weapon. Hands on your head." Seeing John handcuff the surrendering suspect, Jack finally relaxed. As his colleagues gathered around, he pretended to be shaky, leaning on the car and dry heaving. Commander Gray, now conscious, patted his shoulder. "Are you all right?" Jack feigned weakness. "I'm fine. Just a bit too tense, I guess." Gray, rarely smiling, gave him an approving grin. "Good job, kid. You saved my life." The radio then announced that Lucy and Tim had successfully captured the last suspect. Hannah, still shaken by the scene, and Angela, unfazed, approached Jack. Angela playfully punched his chest. These weeks of practice at the range paid off. "You're the best rookie I've ever seen in a real situation. I've never seen anyone land all 15 shots from a Glock in a live firefight at over 20 meters." Startled, Jack looked at the corpse. It was riddled with bullets, including multiple hits to the abdomen and neck, and the chest was almost obliterated. He wondered how Angela could tell there were exactly 15 shots. Despite remembering every detail of firing, Jack felt uneasy. Was his performance too perfect? Even missing a couple of shots would make it easier to explain later. Suddenly, he thought of the system. Opening it in his mind, he saw a new notification: "Congratulations, host, for successfully using mental strength in combat. Handgun marksmanship upgraded to mastery." So it was the mental strength enhancement that linked to skills. If he hadn't upgraded his mental strength, not only would his marksmanship have remained the same, but Gray might not have survived. This system never explained anything clearly, leaving everything for him to figure out. It was a real pain. The aftermath of the parking lot shootout was a 3-day administrative leave for all officers involved in the shooting, pending confirmation of the legality of their actions by the district attorney. Before leaving for the day, Jack privately approached Commander Gray with a request. "You bailed out that guy who stole the evidence." Zoe, lying exhausted on Jack's chest after another intense session, traced circles on his skin as usual. "Yeah. The bail was $5,000 for less than $2,000 in stolen money. I just got my paycheck, and most of it's gone. I'm going to be eating scraps this month." Finally relaxed, Jack joked, hugging Zoe. Rookies in the LAPD earned around $70,000 to $80,000 a year, about $6,000 a month. Paying $5,000 in bail had hit Jack hard, and he prayed the guy didn't screw up again during the bail period. Fortunately, he didn't have the American habit of living on credit, with a pile of bills waiting at the end of the month. Living with Hannah, he had minimal expenses except for the cost of bullets for practice. Chapter 12, Meeting the Glasses Girl Again. After listening to Jack recount the story of the unfortunate father and son, Zoe gave him a kiss on the lips as a reward. "Jack, you really are a kind person." Jack sighed. In his previous life, although he had always been single, he had experienced hardship. If not for a friend's help, he might have never bounced back and lived as carefree as he did after 40. Helping that father and son today was purely for his peace of mind. If he were an independent investigator, he might have let the men go, knowing full well the notorious reputation of American child welfare services. They could very well take the boy away from his father for some ridiculous reason. Of course, Jack had no desire or capability to change the economic decline and middle-class collapse in America. He wasn't that ambitious. His current biggest wish was to enhance his abilities through the system and take care of the girls around him in this strange world. As for the future, he would decide once he fully understood the limits of the system's capabilities. Right now, he had a more serious and immediate problem to deal with. After today's shootout, he once again found himself in a manic state and ended up exhausting Zoe in bed. Previously, Jack had consulted a high school friend who was a top student. Following his advice, Jack bought several psychology books and even gained the skill, Psychology, Beginner, but he still couldn't find an answer. When Jack finished describing his problem, Zoe cupped his face, examining him closely, and gave a response that made him laugh and cry. "I've heard of PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, in the military, but I've never heard of what you're describing. I think maybe God made you too perfect, so he gave you this little flaw." Then, the alluring older woman smiled mischievously. "Actually, you don't need to worry too much about it. I give you special permission. If I'm not around and you find yourself in a similar situation, you can ask little Hannah to help you out." Jack's heart skipped a beat, and he blurted out, "Are you sure?" Seeing his quick response, Zoe left a bite mark on his shoulder and said through gritted teeth, "Yes, you can also ask Maureen. I think she's very interested in you. After our meal, she kept asking about you. If she, as a psychologist, can't solve your problem, let her try another way. I love TV drama worlds. I love strong women," Jack thought, suppressing his excitement and putting on a hurt expression. "Darling, do you doubt me? I think I need further treatment from you." Zoe rolled her eyes but then gasped, losing herself in the ensuing passion. The next day, Jack went to the EAP counseling center as usual to see Maureen, not because he believed Zoe's outrageous suggestion but due to the police union's mandatory requirement. Basically, that's it. The symptoms persist until I release them. Jack looked slightly embarrassed. "I hope this issue isn't recorded in my file. If I ever apply to the FBI or another agency, they'll see these records. I don't want to be seen as antisocial or sexually deviant." Today, Maureen wore a knee-length white dress, simple yet highlighting her figure. Her makeup was lighter than last time, giving her a more ladylike appearance. She sat across from Jack, not behind her desk, and her bare legs, visible through her open-toed high heels, showed off pink nail polish. Listening to Jack, she occasionally curled her toes, which Jack found oddly endearing. Jack didn't know why he was using the word cute for a woman in her 30s, and he wasn't a foot fetishist, but Maureen's outfit today made it hard for him to know where to look without feeling like he was disrespecting her. After hearing Jack out, Maureen elegantly sipped her tea and adjusted her gold-rimmed glasses. "Rest assured, Zoe is my best friend. You have my guarantee that our discussions on this matter will never be recorded or written down." Seeing Jack nod gratefully, she continued, "Can you describe in detail your reactions during life-and-death situations or extreme stress and what you think about when the symptoms appear afterward?" Jack pretended to ponder, though there was no need. The scenes played out in his mind like a slow-motion movie, each frame vividly clear. The first time, a suspect shot at my patrol car with a semi-automatic rifle. I ducked to avoid the bullets, and one grazed my ear, embedding in the headrest. At that moment, I felt the adrenaline surge through me. Not only was my mind highly focused, but my observational and reactionary abilities, even my confidence, were significantly heightened. Until I killed the suspect, I didn't show any of the normal reactions to stress. Afterward, I forced myself to look at the body. Though I felt disgusted, I didn't feel like vomiting. The second time was yesterday when I saw a suspect aiming at Commander Gray. That feeling came back. I knew there wasn't time to grab the rifle from the back seat, but I could kill him from that distance. So I drew my handgun and emptied the magazine, even though I had only practiced shooting at 10-meter targets for the past month. Maureen, reading a report, asked with interest, "So you did it? The report says you hit the suspect with all 15 rounds in the torso within 5 seconds using single-shot mode." "Yes, it was an exceptional performance," Jack admitted, scratching his head, thinking it was the result of his mental strength breaking 20 and not related to the adrenaline. "So what's the problem?" As a law enforcement officer, having such an extremely calm mindset under pressure is a talent, isn't it? Do you know how many officers seek my help every year for combat anxiety? Most have to leave frontline duty, Maureen said with a hint of exasperation. Chapter 13, Detective Hunter. But the problem is that this aftermath is a bit severe. Afterward, I either feel like shooting every gang member I see on the street or my mind is filled with that, like some kind of pervert. Jack hadn't expected that his serious concern would get such a casual response from the beautiful psychologist. It was probably a cultural difference between the two countries. Have you ever had the impulse to shoot civilians or colleagues, or to jump on any woman you see? Jack quickly shook his head. Absolutely not. I can only describe it as an extreme aversion to criminals, like having an obsessive-compulsive disorder. My rational mind can suppress it, but it makes me extremely agitated. And the impulse? Maureen pressed. Jack hesitated. It's more like constantly fantasizing about being with Zoe. Only Zoe. Maureen's expression turned slightly ambiguous. Could this glasses girl really be interested in me, as Zoe suggested? Jack thought, noticing Maureen's subtle body language. Although his psychology skills were only at the beginner level, his ability to read people had improved significantly. He put on a bashful, slightly embarrassed expression, speaking haltingly. Well, sometimes about Hannah, and, you. So, it's only about women you're familiar with. I've heard your training officer Angela is also quite attractive, Maureen said casually, lightly biting her lip as she seemed to ponder. However, the rosy tips of her ears betrayed her inner turmoil. So, she is interested in me. No wonder she dressed up today, hitting all my preferences. Jack felt a surge of excitement but kept his composure. I respect Officer Angela very much and would never think of her that way. In fact, Jack hadn't had any improper thoughts about Angela. She had 4 brothers, which had fostered a competitive nature, making her a great buddy rather than a romantic interest. So your most urgent need is to resolve this aftermath, Maureen said, taking another sip of tea and contemplating for a moment. She then suggested, how about this, next time you feel this way, contact me immediately. I have an office at Central Hospital where I can test your hormone levels. We need to determine if this is physiological or psychological. Jack hesitated, feeling somewhat embarrassed. Maureen's offer was generous, considering that seeing a psychologist in America was expensive, and he wasn't sure if police insurance would cover it. Plus, he was currently quite strapped for cash. Haha, don't worry, big boy. You wanted confidentiality, right? This will be off the books, just me helping out. If you feel bad about it, you can cook me a meal. I've been craving your cooking. No problem, thank you, Maureen. Jack genuinely appreciated her offer, even if it was likely because of her friendship with Zoe. As a psychologist, Maureen was part of the upper middle class in America, both in income and social status. Even if she was attracted to him, given her looks and figure that could rival a Victoria's Secret model, the age difference wasn't a big deal. It was hard to say who would be taking advantage of whom. After giving Maureen a grateful hug, Jack left the office, not noticing her slightly complex expression. Watching Jack leave, Maureen closed the door and excitedly took out her phone like a schoolgirl. Hey, Zoe, your boy just left. He talked about his issues. Don't worry, it doesn't seem too serious. Yes, I know he's yours. Of course, I'll let you be there. His willpower is incredibly strong, with an extraordinary sense of self-moral restraint. Yes, like those old-fashioned tough guys in movies. Why did you meet him first? You lucky woman. For the next day and a half, Jack ran between the bank and the community college. Even attending community college in America wasn't cheap, costing more than police academy training. Fortunately, the LAPD covered student loans, so being a police officer in LA was a decent choice for the average person. He just hoped this TV drama world wouldn't have a Floyd incident, where the police are scapegoated by the higher-ups during a crisis. If that happened, no matter how good the benefits, no one would want to be a cop. Jack planned to finish community college as quickly as possible, get his degree, and then move off the front lines. Whether becoming a detective or joining the FBI like Hannah, he didn't want to be suddenly shot on the street someday. On the third day of his leave, Hannah finally got a break. Only she and Angela didn't fire their weapons during the drug bust, as they captured the courier with the wool hat. Early in the morning, the sweet girl excitedly woke Jack up. She had already contacted the Hunter couple, and the two seniors were looking forward to their visit today. Jack, unable to resist Hannah's enthusiasm, yawned as he got up to make breakfast. Having to retake college courses in his mid-20s was tough, but this young body was in peak condition. With excellent memory and energy, plus the significant mental strength boost, the required textbooks for his courses seemed manageable. Community college courses weren't difficult, but professors had higher expectations for those who wanted to graduate early. Jack chose to major in psychology, hoping to kill two birds with one stone. This major would help him in future investigations, and it was a skill on his system panel. If needed, he could buy some system coins directly. At 9 a.m., Hannah parked in front of a quaint little house on Maryland Street. Jack got out, retrieving the gift he had prepared, a bottle of aged whiskey, one of the few treasures he had brought from the small grocery store. Hannah had a bouquet of roses. Walking across the lawn, Jack noticed it had once been meticulously maintained, with red roses lining the fence. But it was clear the garden hadn't been tended to in months, with weeds sprouting and the roses looking untidy. Catching Jack's concerned look, Hannah also showed a worried expression. Could something be wrong with the couple? The door opened to reveal Dee McCall, who still carried an air of elegance. "Mrs. Hunter, it's a pleasure to meet you," Hannah said, stepping forward to hug her and hand over the flowers. "Hello, lovely Hannah. It's so nice to see you again," Dee McCall said, accepting the roses with a delighted expression. Chapter 14, Spare Gun. Jack suppressed his excitement at meeting his childhood idol, showing a shy smile. "Hello, Mrs. Dee McCall, I'm Jack Tavel." To his surprise, Dee McCall reached out and hugged him. "Hello, handsome young man. We're so glad you could come." Upon entering the house, they didn't see the person they had been eagerly anticipating. Noticing their confusion, Dee McCall sighed. "Rick had a stroke 2 months ago. He's paralyzed on his right side and his recovery has been slow." Both of them felt a pang of concern. Jack quickly asked, "Can we see him?" Dee McCall nodded. "Of course, he'd love that. He hasn't been out of the house for half a month." Knowing that two young officers were coming to visit cheered him up. "We don't have children, so we rarely have young visitors." She led them to a bedroom on the first floor. Inside, an elderly man with a gaunt frame and a head full of silver hair smiled at them. Despite his frail condition, the man's eyes still held a hint of the resolute spirit that had defined Detective Hunter. "Mr. Hunter, I'm Jack Tavel. It's an honor to meet you. I've admired your work for a long time." Despite his efforts to stay calm, Jack's voice trembled, betraying his emotions. Although Rick Hunter was half paralyzed, his mind was clear. The stubborn old man extended his left hand, which could still move, to shake Jack's hand. Seeing the young man's excitement, Hunter looked puzzled. "Nathan Tavel and Fanny Tavel, are they related to you?" Jack was taken aback. Did Detective Hunter know his parents? Considering that Hunter had served in LA for over 30 years, it was possible. Throwing away his prepared speech, he decided to be honest, his voice still shaking. "They are my parents. Do you remember them?" "Of course, Nathan and Fanny were old friends of mine. Back when I was still on the streets, I used to stop by their little shop on Saturn Street for some Caricion snacks." "You must not have been born yet. How are they now?" Jack felt a pang of sadness and adopted a sorrowful expression. There was a fire 3 years ago. I survived, but they didn't. Oh, you poor child, Dee McCall, now teary-eyed, hugged Jack. Rick Hunter looked remorseful. I'm so sorry, son. I didn't know. It's all right. It's all in the past. My father often spoke about you, which inspired me to join the LAPD. Jack, now in actor mode, comforted the elderly couple and continued with his story. Hannah, who had been listening, suddenly realized why Jack had insisted on visiting these two seniors. She hadn't known about this incredible coincidence. Listening to Rick Hunter recounting the past, Jack felt lucky. It turned out that over 30 years ago, when Hunter was still a patrol officer, he had once helped chase away some troublemakers from their small grocery store, which led to a casual acquaintance with Jack's parents. Over time, and due to Hunter's busy career as a detective, they had lost touch. It was your parents' elopement story that gave me the courage to propose to Dee, Rick Hunter said wistfully. Jack felt relieved by this unexpected connection and smoothly established a relationship with the Hunter couple. He elaborated that his parents were grateful people who often read newspaper stories about Hunter's heroic deeds and told them to their son. This inspired young Jack to become an LAPD officer. To reinforce his story, he vaguely described an old case from Hunter, leading Rick and Dee to vividly recall the details, much to Jack's delight. Hannah played her part as well, adding details about how Jack had persevered through his hardships, continued his education, and graduated from the police academy with honors, becoming a promising young officer. The result was that Jack gained new aunt and uncle figures, and he and Hannah were invited to stay for lunch, where they enjoyed Dee's delicious stew. After lunch, Jack helped move Hunter into his wheelchair, reflecting on how tough it must be for Dee. She was under 5'7", while Hunter was 6'6". No wonder his rehabilitation was difficult. Wheeling Hunter to the front yard to enjoy some fresh air and sunlight, Jack tidied the lawn while chatting with his new uncle. Hannah said you've been a cop for less than 2 months and have already taken down 2 suspects. Hunter, gently massaging his unresponsive right arm, asked skeptically. Yes, the first time was during my rookie training, dealing with a hostage situation. The second was stopping a drug dealer who was about to shoot Commander Gray, Jack replied, trimming the rose bushes. I thought LA in the 80s and 90s was dangerous enough. Every time I handled a case, I had to get a new car. Seems like things haven't improved much. Jack nodded vigorously, thinking about how much he had enjoyed watching Hunter's car chases and crashes as a child, never realizing the expense involved. Hey kid, do you have a backup gun? Hunter suddenly asked, then turned and shouted into the house. Dee, bring me the box from the safe. Dee returned with an elegant walnut box, placed it on Hunter's lap, and smiled. Are you really going to part with your prized possession? Curious, Jack watched as Hunter struggled to open the box with his left hand. Inside lay a magnificent blued Colt python. I can't use it anymore, so I might as well give it to a worthy young man. Out on the dangerous streets, you can't rely solely on a plastic gun. Sometimes, the old guns are more dependable. Jack's issued Glock 22 had many polymer components, earning it the nickname plastic gun among veteran officers. In contrast, the Colt Python was a classic, widely used by American police officers in the 70s and 80s. It's an honor, sir, Jack said, touched by the gift. Chapter 15, Spare Gun. Of course, times had changed, and the 6-shot revolver, even with a speed loader, took several seconds to reload and had become obsolete. However, the blued Colt Python with a 6-inch barrel in front of him was simply too attractive. Jack carefully held it, feeling its hefty weight, almost double that of his Glock 22. As he caressed the ivory grips, Jack couldn't help but fall in love with the weapon. Men often have an affinity for powerful objects, and Jack was no different. He had fond memories of the detective from City Hunter always showing off with one of these. Take it and use it. My old backup gun had a 3-inch barrel and will go with me to the grave. This one was custom made for me by Colt when I retired, thanks to my colleagues chipping in. I only fired 5 rounds through it, and it's excellent. Hunter's eyes were firm, his cheeks flushed. Seeing the determination and trembling of his only functional left hand gripping the box, Jack swallowed his refusal and made a decision. Uncle Hunter, have you heard of Chinese medicine? Jack knew nothing about Chinese medicine, save for making herbal broths for Zoe and adding goji berries to his tea as he got older. However, spouting some theories about yin-yang and balance to Americans would be enough to mask the miraculous effects of his healing spell. Over the next half hour, Jack used his silver tongue to persuade the elderly couple to try his massage technique. To bolster his argument, he fabricated a story about a great-grandfather who had served as a royal physician in ancient China. The prospect of walking again was too tempting, and Hunter agreed to give it a try. Jack asked Hannah to fetch a bottle of medicinal oil from Chinatown from his attic. Jack couldn't help but laugh at himself. The last time he used this oil was for foreplay with Zoe. Now, he was using it to massage a septuagenarian. Life was indeed strange. With his mastery-level healing skill, Jack's movements were more controlled than ever. After 2 hours of strenuous effort and releasing his power discreetly, he managed to restore some sensation to Hunter's paralyzed right side by healing his brain damage and atrophied muscles. It's incredible. How did you do this? It's unimaginable. Hunter's voice trembled with disbelief as he lifted his once-numb right hand, attempting to bend his fingers. Uncle Hunter, Aunt Dee, I must clarify something. I don't have a medical license, so I won't acknowledge anything I did here today. Please keep this to yourselves, especially from your family doctor. If Uncle Hunter recovers from his stroke, it's all thanks to his willpower and relentless rehabilitation. Jack felt the need to issue this warning. While he trusted the couple's integrity, the American legal system was notorious for protecting the wealthy. If a doctor took notice and reported it, who knew what consequences might follow? He didn't want his good deed to result in legal troubles or a criminal record. Oh, my God, Jack, you must be an angel sent to save us. You have no idea. We've even been looking for a suitable nursing home. I don't know how to thank you. Aunt Dee hugged Jack, sobbing. It was clear that this tough former detective had been worn down by Hunter's condition. The visit, initially planned for half a day, lasted the entire day. When Jack and Hannah finally prepared to leave with the gun box, it was already evening. I'll come back next week for another treatment. Uncle Hunter should be fully recovered in about 2 months. Please keep this confidential. Jack reiterated his warning, still concerned. Dee, now calmer, nodded repeatedly, reluctantly bidding them farewell. As Jack started the Mustang, Hannah's exuberant expression puzzled him. Why do I feel like you're happier than Dee? Because I finally know one of your secrets. You actually know mysterious Chinese medicine, something even Zoe doesn't know. Heh. Jack sighed, unable to comprehend Hannah's thought process. So, as the price for keeping this secret, will you tell me what that mysterious perfume you've been using is called? Hannah grinned mischievously. Huh? What perfume? I'm an evolved human with no body odor. I don't even need deodorant, let alone perfume. Don't lie to me. Ever since you became a cop, you've had this really nice minty smell. Come on, tell me. I've been looking for that scent everywhere. Jack's brain stuttered for a moment before he recalled, you mean the Lucian, Florida water I use. And you said you didn't use perfume. Ah. It took Jack half an hour on the way home to explain to Hannah that Lucian, Florida water, correctly translated as Six Gods floral water, wasn't a perfume but a Chinese product used for repelling mosquitoes and refreshing the mind. However, Americans were familiar with Florida water as a type of light perfume. He had no choice. In the sweltering August heat of LA, with daytime temperatures easily reaching 37 to 38 degrees Celsius, wearing the LAPD's long-sleeve wool uniforms was unbearable. Without the floral water, he'd be more than just sweaty. What he found most outrageous was that this product was only sold in some pharmacies and at a whopping $10 a bottle. It was a racket, worse than street vendors selling flour as cocaine. If only he could return to China without the system's incessant warnings. Instead of risking his life as a cop in LA, he could make a killing selling small goods from China. The next day at work, Jack registered his finely crafted Colt Python with the police station. Stepping out, he found Hannah surrounded by female officers, all clamoring for the floral water she wore, which she had generously shared the source of, much to Jack's amusement. That day turned out to be especially lucky for Jack. Commander Gray, usually all business, extended a rare gesture of goodwill to his savior, announcing that Jack could choose to wear short-sleeve uniforms, leaving rookies John and Lucy Green with envy. Chapter 16, Warning. In the following weeks, the Wilshire Police Department was quite tumultuous. Tim Bradford's drug-addicted wife, Isabella, was hospitalized due to an overdose. In the room she shared with her current live-in boyfriend, at least 1 kilogram of high-purity drugs was found. Given her past as a DEA agent, exposure in prison would be a death sentence for her, leaving her no choice but to accept the DEA's offer to become an undercover agent once more. The DEA wanted to use her boyfriend's connections to uncover the entire drug trafficking network. Jack had a hard time understanding Tim's naive thinking. Even after being utterly humiliated, Tim still planned to send his wife to rehab once the matter was resolved, hoping to mend his broken family. Jack really wanted to punch him and loudly tell him to give up. Lucy was his true match. John, on the other hand, had terrible luck. One day while patrolling with Talia Bishop, they encountered 2 armed robbers at a small convenience store. Bishop apprehended one, and John chased the other into a residential house, ultimately having to shoot the resisting robber in a second-floor bedroom. Despite having body camera footage, the deceased's brother filed a formal complaint against John, forcing Internal Affairs to intervene. John received a week-long administrative leave. As a rookie still on probation, and without his training officer Bishop present at the scene, Internal Affairs grilled him intensely. Adding to this, his first shooting leading to psychological stress prompted Jack to take John to see Maureen. That evening, Jack called Lucy, and the 3 met again at the small pub. "How did you recover so quickly after shooting twice? Am I too sensitive?" John asked Jack, puzzled. Jack glanced at Lucy guiltily, thinking to himself that he couldn't exactly suggest sleeping with a girl as a solution since the 2 of them had broken up. Or maybe, you're more worried about your career. After finally deciding to start over in middle age, you're now questioning your choices because you're being doubted for following protocol. Jack attempted to use his rudimentary psychology skills. John shook his head. "I'm not that fragile. I just think that person didn't deserve to die. Maybe I was too hasty in pulling the trigger. Perhaps I could have subdued him without shooting. He was so young, he might have just acted on impulse." "Hey!" Lucy couldn't take it anymore and slapped him on the shoulder. "I don't want to attend your funeral. Thinking like that will get you killed. I think you'd be better off being a cop across the Pacific." "I hear their police are criticized if they don't shoot to wound first," Jack joked, smirking at John. "The police are part of the state's machinery of violence. We're tools used by the ruling class to maintain their interests. If you can't accept that, becoming a cop was the wrong choice for you." Seeing their bewildered expressions, Jack shrugged. "Forget I said anything. Didn't you major in psychology? How do you know so much about political terminology?" John asked, puzzled. "Heh, there's no way I can tell you that in my previous life, certain countries included dragon-slaying techniques in their 9-year compulsory education." Jack shook his head, planning to brush it off. At that moment, a hot beer girl sashayed over with 3 bottles of beer, leaving a napkin with a phone number on John's table as she left. "Wow." Lucy's face instantly turned interesting, teasingly saying, "First time I've seen a badge chaser girl. Be careful." Seems like there were still lingering feelings. How did they despise me last time when they broke up? Jack had invited Lucy tonight to cheer John up, not to watch the 2 of them rekindle their romance. If something did happen, causing them both to get fired, not only would the plot get messed up, but it would also be incredibly boring for Jack to be alone at the Wilshire Police Department. Thinking of this, he slapped his waist. "Not necessarily. My badge isn't hidden either. Maybe she's into older guys, like you." "Shut up." Lucy, both angry and embarrassed, threw a French fry at him. The 3 of them laughed and talked about Tim and his wife. It seemed widely known that undercover agents often weren't treated as humans, constantly facing pressure from both ruthless criminals and suspicion from their own colleagues. Cases like Isabella's, where undercover agents ended up as addicts, were not uncommon. Jack recalled that Lucy later underwent undercover training as well. However, since he had traveled through time before the rookie ended, he didn't know her final fate. But since they were talking about it, he deliberately steered the conversation toward the police's inhumane aspects, as a sort of preemptive warning. When Tim and his wife finally broke up, Lucy could pair up well with Tim as bickering partners. Apart from John, Jack's favorite character in the show was Tim. This retired veteran was loyal and affectionate, with a tough exterior but a soft heart, always longing for a complete family. Only he could handle Lucy, the unreliable older guy enthusiast. That night, only Jack drove his Chevrolet, so he didn't drink much. After dropping Lucy off at her apartment, he took John to his new house. Watching John stagger into his home, Jack turned around to head back. The headlights swept past a black Mazda parked by the road, and a fleeting shadow inside caught his attention. It was already past 10 p.m., and John's new house was a standalone villa with the nearest neighbor a couple hundred meters away, making the Mazda particularly suspicious. Jack pretended nothing happened and drove 300 or 400 meters away. Seeing northwest cars on the road, he turned off his lights and slowly drove back while calling John's phone. There was no answer. Thinking for a moment, he dialed 911, reported his badge number, and requested backup from nearby patrol officers. Since he was off duty, not in uniform, and had no authority to search the suspicious vehicle, and considering he had been drinking, it was better to have more witnesses to avoid trouble. Just as he ended the call with 911, John's call came in. "I was in the shower." "What's up, Jack? Did I leave something in your car?" "Grab your gun. You might have a visitor." Jack's Chevrolet was already close to the Mazda. About 20 meters apart, he suddenly turned on the high beams, only to find the car empty. He hurriedly warned John on the phone, "Be careful, they might be in the house already. Find cover. I'll be at your door in a minute. Don't shoot by mistake." Chapter 17, First Aid, Prime Minister Style. John's voice came through the phone, "I think I see him." As Jack dashed across the street with his Glock in hand, 2 gunshots rang out from inside the house almost simultaneously. Jack's heart tightened as he loudly called John's name and dialed 911 again. John's voice echoed from inside, "I'm okay, shot in the shoulder. The suspect is by the pool, down with a gunshot wound." Jack spoke loudly into the phone, "This is Officer Jack Tavola at 5439 Chautauqua Boulevard. Officer John Nolan has been attacked in his home and is injured. The suspect is down. We need an ambulance immediately." Hanging up, Jack continued to call out, "John, I'm coming in. Are you all right?" John let out a painful groan. Jack first headed to the pool, keeping his Glock trained on the intruder lying on the ground. The man had a chest wound, blood bubbling with each breath, likely a lung shot and probably beyond saving. Just to be safe, Jack handcuffed the man and left him to bleed out. He turned and went inside to check on John. John's situation wasn't great either. A bullet had hit his right shoulder, causing him to collapse behind the sofa in pain. The bullet seemed lodged in his shoulder blade without an exit wound. Jack propped him up and used a towel to staunch the bleeding. He applied a bit of healing magic to slow the blood loss but didn't dare continue, fearing it would be hard to explain to the paramedics later. Making John comfortable on the sofa, Jack asked, "Do you know who he is?" John, breathing heavily, replied, "He said his name is Kyle Montgomery, the brother of Alex, the guy I shot a few days ago. I saw him at the precinct when he filed a complaint. Don't worry about me, his injury should be worse. Go check on him. You're such a saint. I'll recommend you for canonization by the Vatican," Jack retorted sarcastically. Grabbing another towel, he walked back to the poolside. The intruder was barely breathing. Jack used the towel to press on the wound, but this time, he didn't use healing magic. Instead, he performed a perfunctory CPR, thinking about how the former Japanese Prime Minister's bodyguard had done the same when the Prime Minister was shot in the chest. Hopefully, no one would question his actions. Jack didn't oppose vengeance for a family member, but in this situation, he had to support eradicating any threats. After all, John was his friend, and loyalty dictated his stance. Within 5 minutes, a night patrol car arrived. Jack quickly identified himself, aware that police officers on night shifts were often on edge and could mistakenly shoot a fellow officer. Shortly after, 2 ambulances arrived, taking John and the body away. 20 minutes later, Wilshire precinct officers arrived, including Captain Gray and Zoe. Jack had just finished giving his statement to the night patrol when he greeted them and explained the situation. Captain Gray, with a stern expression, nodded after listening, considering it a grudging compliment. Zoe patted Jack's shoulder, signaling not to mind. Isabella, Tim's wife, was exposed while meeting with drug dealers tonight and is currently missing. Tim and the DEA are still searching for her. Captain Gray and I were at the precinct waiting for updates. Jack nodded in understanding and asked, "Do you need me to stay on duty?" "I didn't fire my weapon, so I'm available." Zoe shook her head. "We have sufficient personnel. Go home and rest. If the DEA finds new leads tomorrow, there might be a raid." Jack acknowledged, planning to wash the blood off his hands before driving home to sleep. However, a male internal affairs agent suddenly appeared, blocking his way. "Are you Officer Jack Tavola? What's your relationship with John Nolan? Why were you at his home tonight? Do you know the suspect?" The barrage of questions momentarily stunned Jack. Is this how LAPD Internal Affairs operates? They seemed more like they were treating their own officers as criminals. "John and I are colleagues and friends. I drove him home and noticed a suspicious vehicle across the street. I called 911 and warned John. There should be recordings of my 2 calls at dispatch. I don't understand what you're implying. I'm exhausted and plan to go home." Jack's temper flared. He believed his actions today were beyond reproach. If this internal affairs agent persisted, he wouldn't hesitate to involve the union lawyer. As a patrol officer with aspirations of climbing the ranks, maintaining a clean record was essential. It wasn't time to delve into gray areas yet. Fortunately, Jack's recent performance had been commendable, and capable individuals naturally garnered protection from their superiors. Before Zoe could intervene, Captain Gray, who had been scowling, stepped in. "You, stay away from my officer. Jack might be a rookie, but I can say he knows how to be a good LAPD officer better than you. His actions today were flawless. If I see you harassing him again, I won't hesitate to file a complaint with Captain West." This stern supervisor was someone Jack could respect. His impression of Gray improved significantly, recalling how his attitude towards John had softened recently. Gray was as strict and principled as portrayed in the show, a good man. Jack remembered that Gray later survived a severe shooting. He'd have to find a way to save him again if that scenario arose. Using John's bathroom, Jack cleaned the blood off his hands and body, then checked his system. The recent parking lot shootout had earned him considerable experience. Although he hadn't fired a shot tonight, his significant involvement in the incident, combined with patrols, had earned him another gold coin, leaving his experience bar at 15. Zoe saw Jack come out, greeted Captain Gray, and excused herself, saying she needed to return to the precinct. She walked out with Jack, asking softly once they were out of earshot, "Are you sure you're okay?" Jack, understanding her meaning, shook his head. "I'm fine. John handled it himself. I didn't enter an adrenaline rush state." With colleagues around, it wasn't appropriate to tease his superior, so they didn't talk much and each got into their own cars. Chapter 18, Before the Battle. Watching Zoe drive away, Jack didn't start his car right away. Instead, he called Lucy to inform her about the recent events. He reassured her that John was not in life-threatening danger and finally managed to calm her down, promising to visit the hospital with her after work the next day before hanging up. Driving home, Jack couldn't help but shake his head at the situation. Here he was, a 21-year-old aspiring elite cop, turned into an emotional counselor, constantly dealing with relationship dramas. Though being a bystander was entertaining, it was nowhere near as exciting as flirting with Zoe or enjoying perks from Hannah. Oh, and he couldn't forget about the bespectacled Maureen. When he arrived home, it was almost midnight. Hannah was startled by the bloodstains on his clothes. After a brief explanation of what had happened, Jack went upstairs to take a shower. He then made some wontons for a late-night snack and chatted with Hannah while they ate. "How do you always stay so calm in these situations? You don't seem like a rookie at all." "Even if I were there, I couldn't guarantee handling things better than you," Hannah said, regretting not going out drinking with Jack tonight because she wanted to stay home and play games. "Get some sleep, don't stay up too late. There might be a big operation tomorrow," Jack said, washing the dishes. Seeing Hannah's slightly swollen lips from the chili oil in the dipping sauce, he felt a sudden urge and bent down to kiss her. As he watched her eyes gradually fill with mist, Jack realized that, despite not firing a shot today, he was still experiencing some residual adrenaline. This complicated his already tangled feelings, further cementing his role as a man caught between two women. If you can't handle spicy food, don't eat so much next time. Pulling back his hand, which had been inching towards more intimate territory, Jack hurriedly left, offering a lame explanation. Hannah, blushing and hugging herself, sat stunned for a moment before collapsing onto the couch, burying her head in the cushion and giggling softly. The next day, Jack drove to the precinct. As he approached the briefing room, he saw through the glass that Zoe and a red-eyed Captain Gray were conducting roll call. What happened? Jack asked, pulling Lucy aside as she was about to enter the briefing room. Tim's wife, Isabella, was found 2 hours ago in an alley, shot in the head. She's still in surgery. The DEA has identified the suspect's hideout. The precinct is preparing to capture him, Lucy said quickly. They then entered the briefing room together. A few minutes later, with everyone present, Captain Gray began the briefing. The suspect, Vance Marcus, is likely hiding in a storage facility in the Southgate area. DEA agents Wolf and Vestry will lead the local patrol in the search. He then looked at Jack and the others. You will head to the Bronson building. We have intelligence that Vance's girlfriend, Cija Olivo, lives there, but we don't have an exact apartment number. This means you'll need to conduct a door-to-door search. Zoe added, be cautious during the search. Vance is a major drug lord, and his associates are heavily armed and won't surrender easily. Watch out for each other and stay safe. I called the hospital earlier. John's bullet has been removed, and he should recover in about 2 weeks without any lasting damage. However, due to his absence, Hannah will temporarily replace him and team up with Bishop. Lucy and Jack will stay with their respective instructors. The building has many residents, so it's not advisable to carry rifles, but each of you can carry extra magazines and prepare your backup weapons. With their orders, everyone set out. After collecting his gear from the armory, Jack received a shoulder holster from Hannah at the entrance. I made this from the best calf leather on our farm over the past 2 days. Try it with your Colt Python. Jack felt a pang of guilt. Despite how he had acted towards Hannah last night, she was still so considerate towards him. Now wasn't the time to address this, so he quietly thanked her and wished her to stay safe before quickly catching up with Angela. Today, Angela was driving. As Jack settled into the passenger seat, he started organizing his gear, inserting armor plates into his vest and adjusting the new shoulder holster. Hannah's craftsmanship was impeccable, the Colt Python fit perfectly without hindering his movements. Angela paid no attention to the finely crafted holster but was drawn to the Colt Python itself. This tough, no-nonsense woman couldn't help but swear. Fuck, where'd you get this beauty? Since Jack had showcased his advanced handgun skills during the parking lot shootout, Angela hadn't had a chance to shoot with him again. Of course, she still shamelessly demanded that he buy her lunch, claiming that his stellar performance was thanks to her special training. Jack, not wanting to show off, had only practiced a few rounds at the range in secret and never flaunted this exquisite revolver publicly. Rick Hunter, an old friend of my parents, gave it to me when I visited him. He said I needed a backup gun and gifted it to me. You know that legendary cop? That's incredible. This custom piece has long been priceless. Angela's eyes practically turned into hearts. Hunter said it cost over $2,500 when it was custom made. It's worth much more now. Handing the Colt Python to Angela, whose mouth was almost watering, Jack took out a box of .357 Magnum rounds and loaded 5 speed loaders, tucking them into his belt. Are you preparing for war? Angela asked, raising an eyebrow. Each of them carried 4 spare magazines. Including the rounds already in their Glocks, they each had 75 rounds of .40 SNW ammo. Jack had additionally prepared 30 rounds of powerful Magnum ammo for his backup gun, which seemed excessive. When dealing with drug lords, there's never enough ammo. Jack vaguely remembered this scene and knew he'd likely be looking at least 3 days of administrative leave afterward. What model is your backup gun? I've never seen you use it, Jack asked, curious. Reluctantly handing back the Colt Python, Angela patted her chest. A Beretta 950. I got it as a birthday gift for myself when I turned 16. Noticing Jack's slightly puzzled look, she laughed. I have a special bra that fits the gun perfectly. Chapter 19, Bronson Building, Part 1. Haha, I just can't imagine how you draw that handgun when you need it, Jack joked freely with Angela, now very familiar with her. The Beretta 950 had a very cute design. This miniature handgun was almost exclusively a self-defense weapon for women, which was completely at odds with Angela's usual tough girl image. If you like, I don't mind trading it for your python. I'll even show you how to draw it then, Angela said nonchalantly, puffing out her chest without treating Jack as an outsider. Maybe when I wear a skirt someday, I'll borrow it from you, Jack retorted, unaware he had set a flag for himself, thinking he was being humorous. 3 police cars entered the building's parking lot in sequence. 6 officers got out, reorganizing their equipment. Tim tossed a bulletproof insert to Lucy, signaling her to gear up. Everyone seemed to be treating this seriously, leaving Lucy somewhat bewildered. Do we really need such a big show? Lucy asked, struggling to insert the plate into her vest. Tim asked her seriously, do you know why this place is called the Bronson Building? Isn't it just named after someone named Bronson? Angela, who had also fitted her bulletproof insert, glanced at Jack's belt filled with revolver loaders and then at the naive Lucy, shaking her head secretly before explaining, no, have you seen that old movie from the 70s, Death Wish? It's based on a story here, starring Charles Bronson. Ever since, any cop brave enough to come here is seen as the movie's protagonist. This year, Bruce Willis starred in a remake of that movie. You should watch it, it's a great action film, Tim shrugged, closing the police car's trunk. The 6 officers left the parking lot and headed toward the building entrance. Tim, the most experienced, took charge and assigned tasks. Lucy and I will start checking from the 3rd floor, Stevens, Hannah, and Bishop, Talia, will handle the 2nd floor, and Tower, Jack, and Lopez, Angela, will sweep the 1st floor. Stay in radio contact and remain vigilant. Does this kind of search even work? Jack questioned as he knocked on several residents' doors. Those who saw the police either slammed their doors shut or silently stared at him. Without a search warrant, they could do nothing, and the building's residents, mostly low-income individuals who were hostile to the police, left them feeling powerless. Angela rolled her eyes, signaling him to continue. She had no better idea and could only hope to get lucky. Soon, a call came over the radio. Lucy and Tim had found Cija Olivo, the girlfriend of drug dealer Vance Marcus, in room 365 on the 3rd floor. Angela breathed a sigh of relief and prepared to head towards the elevator, while Jack's nerves tightened, his hand reaching for his Glock, knowing things wouldn't be so simple. Sure enough, just as Angela was about to press the elevator button, intense gunfire erupted from upstairs. It was the sound of automatic rifles, mixed with a few crisp Glock shots. Jack's heart tightened. The gunfire was clear, it came from the 2nd floor, where Hannah and Bishop were. Angela grabbed the radio and called, Hannah, we heard gunfire. What's your situation? There was only chaotic electronic noise and no response. She thought the radio was broken and turned to look at Jack. The radio's jammed, and there's no cell signal, Jack said, shaking his phone. Damn it, the firepower upstairs is too strong. We'll use the stairs to support them, Angela decided, drawing her service pistol. Using the elevator would make them sitting ducks if someone ambushed them. As they turned the corner, Angela, leading the way, was pulled back by Jack. Careful. Before he finished speaking, 2 figures appeared in the corridor ahead, spraying bullets into the corner wall, sending concrete fragments flying. From the moment the gunfire started, Jack's adrenaline had been pumping. With heightened concentration, he noticed every detail in his surroundings. When they turned the corner, he spotted the unusual shadows in the hallway, indicating an ambush. He acted swiftly, saving Angela. After a burst of gunfire, the clicking sound of an empty magazine echoed from the other side. Jack peeked out and fired 5 or 6 shots. Damn, they're wearing body armor, Jack cursed. His shots had hit the attackers' chests, but they wore bulletproof vests. One assailant fell but continued trying to reload his Uzi. Luckily, Angela leaned out and fired a precise shot to the head, killing him. The second attacker, seeing his companion down, screamed in panic, firing wildly as he retreated, trying to take cover. The Uzi's rapid-fire rate was both its strength and weakness. The inexperienced attacker emptied his magazine in less than 2 seconds. Jack and Angela fired simultaneously, taking him down at the corridor's corner. Reloading, Jack said, ejecting his half-empty magazine and replacing it with a full one. Angela maintained her shooting posture, covering him. As Jack finished reloading, Angela pulled him back just in time. A loud bang followed, and steel pellets peppered the wall behind them, forming a semicircle and making Jack break into a cold sweat. The attackers had reinforcements. Angela fired blindly, emptying a magazine, then pulled Jack back. "We need to get out of the hallway. They've got more than one shotgun." Jack nodded. Facing shotguns in the corridor was terrifying. Bulletproof vests couldn't protect their heads, limbs, and lower bodies. He quickly moved towards the other end of the corridor. The building was like a maze with many rooms on each floor and twisting corridors. They cautiously advanced, covering each other until they temporarily lost their pursuers. "Cover me," Angela said, squatting by a room door at the corridor's end and taking out two small tools to pick the lock. "You can do that." "You'll have to teach me sometime," Jack said, impressed by the multifaceted American police skills. "Let's get out of here alive first," Angela said, swiftly unlocking the door. They entered the room, closing the door gently as footsteps echoed in the hallway. Chapter 20, Bronson Building, Part 2. Angela went to check the inner room while Jack pressed his ear to the door, listening to the loud voices outside. Vance said no witnesses. "You two watch the entrance, and leave two more to guard the basement. The rest of you, come with me upstairs." Angela returned and whispered, "No one inside, windows are barred, and there's no landline. We're trapped here." Jack stepped away from the door. "I heard them mention Vance Marcus is in the building. There are a lot of them. We've stirred up a hornet's nest. We need to restore communication and call for backup. It looks like we stumbled into their hideout." "No wonder they have body armor and signal jammers," Angela said anxiously. The gunfire intervals upstairs were getting longer, which was a bad sign. Jack's mind raced. "I heard them say they're guarding the basement. Do you think the signal jammer might be there?" Angela's eyes lit up. "Even if it's not, the power distribution room is down there. If we cut the power, the signal jammer will go down. So, we need to get to the basement." Jack's eyes fell on the kitchen. He walked in and lightly tapped the wall with his gun handle, producing hollow sounds. Drinking with John had its benefits. He loved talking about his old job. "I remember him mentioning that buildings like this usually have several ventilation shafts that run up and down. Next time, bring me along for drinks," Angela said, patting his shoulder and motioning him aside before smashing the wall with a hammer. With two gunshots, they reached the basement and simultaneously shot two guards from behind. Angela stepped forward and kicked the signal jammer, breaking it. She picked up the radio and called out. "This is Car 7A14. Urgent need for police support at Bronson Building. Over 10 armed suspects. Situation critical." Jack also used the radio to call the other two teams. The situation on the second and third floors was dire. Officer Bishop was down, and Hannah was dragging her into a residence home, with 3 assailants trying to break in. Tim and Lucy were trapped in Cija Olivo's apartment. The pregnant woman's water had broken, and Lucy was helping her deliver the baby while Tim was in a standoff with Vance Marcus and several of his men. "They can't wait for reinforcements. It's up to us now," Angela's fiery temper flared. She glared at Jack, ready to go alone if he didn't come along. Jack handed her his Glock and spare magazines. "I remember you showed off your dual-wielding skills. I'll handle the ones in body armor, you take care of the rest." He then drew his Python revolver. On the second floor, Hannah leaned against the wall by the entrance, pointing her gun at the door, which was riddled with bullet holes. In the hallway, 3 drug dealers hurled insults and fired sporadically, bullets punching through the wooden door and plaster walls, creating clouds of white dust from the concrete. "Hey, babe, surrender now. I've never had a cop as pretty as you before. Don't worry, we won't hurt you." Ignoring their taunts, Hannah mentally counted her ammo, occasionally firing a shot to thwart their attempts to break in. "Hey, Hannah, catch." Bishop, lying by the bedroom door, tossed her spare magazine across the living room. Her abdomen was a mess of blood and flesh from a point-blank shotgun blast. Her bulletproof vest only stopped some of the pellets. The elderly white couple, the apartment owners, tried to stem Bishop's bleeding with gauze and towels, but she was already losing too much blood. "Save a bullet for me." "These bastards will do anything," Bishop said before slipping into unconsciousness. As Hannah's emotions neared a breaking point, Jack's voice came over the radio. "Hannah, we're here. Find a way to distract them. Angela and I will take them from behind." Relief washed over her. Nothing was more encouraging than her hero arriving like a deity. She took a deep breath to clear her head and waited. When the assailants fired again, she screamed and kicked over a wooden vase stand, smashing it on the floor. The three men outside exchanged glances, then leered. One, wearing body armor and holding a shotgun, cautiously moved to the door, ready to break in. Suddenly, a shout came from behind them, "LAPD, hands up." Before they could react, Jack's python shattered the head of the one by the door, spraying gore. Angela's dual-wielding Glocks turned the other two into Swiss cheese. Jack didn't hesitate, putting a bullet in each downed attacker to ensure they were dead. "Hannah, the entrance is clear. We're coming in." Seeing him, Hannah, who had been holding on, slid down the wall, which scared Jack. He rushed to her and began healing her with his powers. "I'm fine, just too tense." "Check on Talia, she took a shot to the abdomen," Hannah said, waving off his concern. Jack sighed in relief and went to the bedroom. The elderly wife, trying to stop Bishop's bleeding, looked at him tearfully. "Please help her. I can barely feel her pulse." Though not close to Bishop, Jack couldn't let a colleague bleed out. He took out his emergency kit, which included naloxone for shock and overdoses. But his healing power was crucial. He repaired the main vessels injured by the pellets, stopping the bleeding. Relieved, he knew a night's rest would recover his energy, but avoiding medical suspicion was tricky. As Bishop regained consciousness, the sounds of urgent sirens and gunfire reached them from outside. Reinforcements had arrived. Angela, anxious at the door, peeked in. "Jack, how's Talia?" "Tim's calling for help. Vance Marcus's baby is born, and he's after it. Bishop is safe for now, just lost a lot of blood." Jack thanked the elderly couple. "Thank you for your help. Please take care of her. Our colleagues will be here soon." Chapter 21, Shot. When Jack, Angela, and Hannah arrived at room 365 on the third floor, the place was a mess. There was a large hole in the plasterboard wall to the right of the door where drug dealers had entered the bedroom. Lucy was on the floor, shot in the chest and her fate uncertain. Two burly men were wrestling with Tim, while a Latina woman sat trembling on the living room sofa, holding a newborn baby. Jack hesitated to shoot, fearing he might hit Tim or the woman. Just as he was about to draw his baton and step forward, Angela and Hannah each pulled out a taser and skillfully incapacitated the two men. Lucy. Bruised and battered, Tim scrambled over to Lucy, tearing open her bulletproof vest. "Cough, cough. I'm okay." Lucy, regaining consciousness, coughed violently and pulled out a bulletproof insert from her chest, with a deformed bullet embedded in it. "Vance Marcus ran. He admitted to being the one who hurt my wife." Tim, seeing Lucy was okay, grabbed his gun from the floor and rushed out. Jack, worried for his safety, quickly followed. "Officer Bradford, don't rush. Marcus won't get away, reinforcements are already downstairs." Jack tried to calm Tim as they ran, knowing that the tables had turned and they now held the advantage. They needed to be careful of a desperate counterattack. Unfortunately, just as they feared, as Tim reached the other end of the stairwell and peeked down, a burst of bullets grazed his scalp, ricocheting dangerously off the walls. Ignoring the bullets, Tim vaulted over the railing and landed on the second-floor stairway, firing at Marcus, who was reloading his Uzi. Tim made a critical error. He hadn't checked his ammo after picking up his gun. His first shot hit Marcus's bulletproof vest, making him stagger back. But when Tim tried to fire again, his Glock was empty. Marcus raised his reloaded Uzi, ready to kill Tim, but Jack arrived just in time, firing his powerful .357 Magnum 6 times. The bullets penetrated Marcus's vest, creating 6 large exit wounds. "Fuck you, Bradford. You nearly got us both killed," Jack cursed, collapsing on the stairs, blood pouring from his calf. The earlier bullets had missed Tim but ricocheted off the walls, one of them hitting Jack's right calf. Thankfully, it had missed the bone and lodged in the muscle. Seeing Jack's injury, Tim quickly applied a tourniquet below his knee, feeling guilty. He had indeed lost his head to revenge, not the behavior of a seasoned soldier. "Sorry, kid. It was my fault." "Thank you." Jack didn't hold a grudge, especially when he saw Officer Zoe and Sergeant Black leading a team of SWAT and police officers into the hallway. He breathed a sigh of relief. It was finally over. Jack. Zoe's concern was evident as she saw Jack's injured leg. She pushed past Tim, wanting to check on him herself. "Inspector Anderson, I'm fine. It didn't hit the bone. Have you found Officer Bishop? Her injuries are severe." Jack emphasized the formality of her title, reminding her of the need for discretion. Zoe realized her mistake. Any hint of their relationship could ruin both their careers. "Bishop has been taken to Central Hospital. Is there anyone else injured upstairs?" Lucy took a hit to the chest, but her vest stopped it. "There's also a woman who just gave birth and her newborn." "You handle them, I'll take Jack to the hospital," Tim said, helping Jack stand on one foot, draping Jack's arm over his shoulder. Zoe nodded, still concerned. "I'll come to the hospital later to see you." With a clink, a .40 caliber bullet from an Uzi lay in the stainless steel tray. Dr. Gray put down her forceps, her eyes smiling above her mask. "You're lucky, Jack. The bullet went in less than 2 centimeters. No stitches needed, just leave it open to drain, and you'll be walking in about a week." Jack, fully conscious from the local anesthesia, forced a smile despite the lingering pain. "Thank you, Dr. Gray. I've always been lucky, you know that." Dr. Gray expertly bandaged the wound, adding a playful bow, and leaned close, her breath brushing his face. "You can leave tomorrow. Come back in 3 days for a dressing change. That's an extra service." The older nurse laughed like a hen. "Why not keep him here longer? I can arrange for him to stay in your private room for lunch breaks, no interruptions." Jack, feeling the side effects of his injury creeping in, briefly fantasized about a romance with Dr. Gray. But memories of chaotic personal lives from medical dramas held him back. As Dr. Gray wheeled Jack out of surgery, waiting officers stood and applauded. The applause was for Jack, not the doctor who performed a minor procedure. "All right, I'm returning the hero to you," Dr. Gray said, waving goodbye. "Hey, nice job. I heard about today. You were amazing, and yesterday too. I never got to thank you for saving me." John, also in a wheelchair, congratulated Jack. A woman around John's age but still striking pushed his chair. Jack noticed a certain look in her eyes when she gazed at John. Before Jack could reply, Hannah rushed over and hugged him, planting a kiss on his cheek. "Without you and Angela today, Talia and I might not have made it." Chapter 22, Healing. Prompted by Hannah, Jack quickly asked, "How is Officer Bishop?" Cough. Zoe, who was nearby and visibly displeased, stepped closer and cleared her throat. Only then did Hannah reluctantly release her arms from around Jack's neck. Zoe glared at Hannah before addressing Jack. "Dr. House, the best chief surgeon at Central Hospital, is operating on her. He said thanks to your emergency first aid, Officer Bishop is not in any life-threatening danger." Jack's gaze shifted to Tim, who stood with his arms crossed. Concerned, he asked, "Officer Bradford, how is your wife?" Tim's usually stern face broke into a rare smile, and he nodded. "Isabella's surgery was completed this afternoon. The doctor said there's a high chance she'll regain consciousness." He paused, his expression turning serious. Lucy, who was smiling beside him, nudged him with her elbow, as if encouraging him. Tim seemed to make a difficult decision and continued, "From now on, you can call me Tim. Thank you again for saving my life today. You're the best rookie I've ever seen." Jack grinned happily. Receiving praise from this guy was no easy feat, the bullet he took was well worth it. He then turned to Lucy, who had also been shot, and asked, "Are you okay?" Lucy proudly patted her chest. "The doctor said if my cup size was one size smaller, I might have had a fracture. Now, aside from some bruising, there's no problem." Jack's eyes swept over the surrounding women and thought to himself, "You're the only B-cup here, what's there to be proud of?" He teased, if it were anyone else, they probably wouldn't even have a bruise. Angela slapped him on the shoulder. If you weren't injured, I'd join Lucy in beating you up right now. Everyone laughed and joked around for a while. Maureen, wearing gold-rimmed glasses, appeared out of nowhere and took hold of Jack's wheelchair handles. All right, everyone, this handsome young man still needs to undergo a few more tests, so I'll have to take him away for now. With that, she winked at Zoe and pushed Jack out of the surgical waiting area. Using the elevator, Maureen wheeled Jack into a doctor's office on the 5th floor, closed the door, and had him lie down on a simple bed. I think I've found the problem, she said, picking up a stack of reports from the table and sitting by Jack's bedside. Did Zoe notify you? Jack swallowed hard. The faint scent of Maureen's perfume had been teasing his senses since earlier. Now, as she sat by the bed, her slightly lifted lab coat allowed him to see the edge of her black stockings and garter belt through the gap, making his already fragile willpower even more muddled. Maureen hummed softly, seemingly displeased that Jack hadn't informed her first after the incident. Yes, Zoe called me before you even arrived at the hospital, so I was able to insert the tests I needed during your pre-surgery checkup. Jack's Adam's apple bobbed as he tried desperately to shift his gaze away from the indentations of the stockings at her thighs. The seductive scent of her perfume seemed to grow stronger in the enclosed space. So, what's wrong with me? He asked with difficulty. Maureen seemed oblivious to Jack's discomfort, her eyes never leaving the report in her hands. The blood test results show that your adrenaline levels have remained high since you were brought to the hospital. Your body only slightly reduced adrenaline secretion after leaving the high-pressure environment, but it's still above average levels. Your so-called urge to kill actually stems from this. So, it's a problem with my body. Maureen shook her head. Aren't you curious why a leg injury required a full-body MRI? I checked. There's no tumor or abnormality in your brain or adrenal glands. So, I preliminarily determined that this is a subconscious issue. Your brain continually assumes you're in a dangerous environment. Simultaneously, to counteract the side effects of adrenaline, your body constantly maintains high levels of dopamine, endorphins, and testosterone. This also aligns with your ability to stay calm in combat. Oh crap, I feel anything but calm right now. Jack felt his sanity teetering on the edge, like a taut steel wire about to snap. You fool, this is a gift from God. You're a born warrior. If you lived in ancient times, you'd be the strongest knight and the most sought-after lover by noble women. Maureen snapped the report shut and looked at Jack with eyes gleaming like a dragon discovering a mountain of gold coins. I'd rather not have this damned gift. Maureen, can you call Zoe for me? Jack felt he was about to lose control. Whatever perfume this woman was wearing was too enticing, making him want to bury his face in her chest and take deep breaths. Humph, what do you want? Have Zoe come to my office and do something naughty with you? You hormonally driven beast, this is my office. Maureen leaned over, her cleavage visible through her open neckline, her words mocking but her smile alluring. Shit. It felt like a heavy hammer struck the almost breaking steel wire in Jack's mind. He was sure Maureen was doing this on purpose. Besides, Maureen's delicate hand pressed against Jack's chest, slowly unbuttoning his hospital gown. Zoe has her duties. She begged me to take good care of you. Do you have a better way to calm your subconscious? Injured beasts are very dangerous, Jack gritted his teeth. It's fine. I already locked the door. You won't hurt anyone. Maureen's voice was more seductive than any character Jack had encountered in his past gaming life. She picked up a strand of hair that had fallen to her ear, licked her pink lips, and slowly lowered her head. I'm a patient, and you're my doctor. The mental wire snapped completely, but Jack still tried to resist. Maureen rolled her eyes at him playfully. So be a good boy and don't move. Nurse will take good care of you. An hour later, a rapid knock sounded at the door. Maureen, are you in there? It was Zoe's voice. Just a moment. Maureen, who was lying in Jack's arms, patted the tense man, lazily got up, donned her lab coat, and opened the door to let Zoe in, locking it again after. Today I received a message saying this book has been selected for the first round of recommendations for new books. Since the entire book is less than 50,000 words, I am both happy and anxious. Thank you for your support and love. As a new author with a new book, getting exposure this quickly is truly appreciated. However, I learned about the competitive nature of the new book selection mechanism on Qdian. It seems quite intense, with crucial metrics being follow-up reads, determining whether the book can enter the second and third rounds of recommendations. So please try not to delay reading. It would be quite funny if it dies from being put off. Thank you again, dear readers. Bowing in gratitude. Chapter 23, Aftermath. Good night, my dear knight. Maureen made a playful face as she closed the door to the hospital room. Jack sneered internally. Knight. You and Zoe are the real knights here, I'm just a poor, lame horse. In his mind, he opened the system to check notifications. Today's unfortunate search operation had, unsurprisingly, awarded him a large amount of experience. Not only had his gold increased to 2 coins, but his experience bar still had 50 points remaining after consuming 100. This was his largest experience gain ever. Afraid of arousing suspicion, Jack didn't dare to break through his physique to 20 in the hospital. He closed the system, rubbed his slightly sore lower back, used a healing spell to relieve his fatigue, and fell into a deep sleep. The next day at noon, Hannah came to pick Jack up from the hospital. Everyone involved in the shooting at the Bronson building was given a week-long administrative leave. Including the hospitalized John and Bishop, Wilshire PD's day shift patrol officers were suddenly down by 1/5. Zoe had to temporarily borrow some officers from other precincts. From Hannah, Jack learned the full story of the day's events. Tim's wife, Isabella, had made a deal with the DEA to act as an undercover agent to avoid prosecution by the district attorney's office, aiming to expose a newly risen drug trafficking ring. The leader of this ring was none other than Vance Marcus. Originally, the DEA's plan was to catch Marcus red-handed through Isabella's transaction with him. However, during the transaction, Isabella, unable to control her drug addiction, revealed a flaw, and the cunning Marcus discovered the listening device on her. Marcus held Isabella at gunpoint and fled the DEA's encirclement by car, then attempted to kill her, dumping her with a gunshot wound to the head in a deserted alley before escaping. The next day, which was yesterday, the enraged DEA struck a plea deal with one of Marcus's accomplices, who revealed the location of the drug ring's warehouse and Marcus's surrogate girlfriend, Cecilia Olivo, hiding in the Bronson building. However, he concealed an important fact: the Bronson building was actually Marcus and his accomplice's stronghold. Cecilia Olivo was in her third-floor apartment waiting to give birth, while the cunning Marcus was hiding in a second-floor apartment. Upon receiving news that the DEA had raided his warehouse, Marcus gathered his accomplices and went to escort Cecilia to safety, unexpectedly running into Hannah and Bishop, who were knocking on doors on the second floor. The rest of the story was what Jack had personally experienced. So, what does surrogate girlfriend mean? Jack, hearing the term for the first time, was quite puzzled. Hannah patiently explained, Marcus once had a son who died of illness. He always wanted another child, so he paid a woman to have one for him. They aren't a couple or lovers, just a pure monetary transaction. Jack was enlightened. It turned out that the idea of passing on one's lineage wasn't exclusive to Circeans. So, the baby that Lucy helped Cecilia deliver, was it a boy? It was a girl. Oh. Compared to the previous subway theft case, Jack was quite satisfied with this one. Evil met its due end, and those who should die, did die. 3 days later, Hannah drove Jack to the hospital for a follow-up appointment. They also visited Bishop's room, where her surgery had been successful with no signs of abdominal infection. According to Hannah, the ATF, Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, was requesting Zoe's transfer. This was good news for Angela, as the two had been at odds while competing for detective positions. Now, they could be good friends again. After picking up John, who was also being discharged, the three of them headed to the hospital parking lot. So, what's the relationship between you and that pretty doctor who was pushing your wheelchair? Hannah asked John, her curiosity piqued. Oh, that's Clarice, my college classmate. We hadn't seen each other for 20 years and ran into each other in LA. She's now the chief of emergency at Central Hospital. Jack vaguely remembered this plotline. Apparently, John and Clarice had rekindled their relationship. Joining in on the gossip, he asked, so, is it just a simple old classmates relationship? John didn't shy away and candidly explained, my ex-wife Sarah and I were together since high school. At one point, we had some issues and broke up. Then Clarice came into my life. We started as friends for a few months, but there was so much chemistry between us that every interaction sparked fireworks. Jack mimicked an explosion with his hands. So, with all those sparks, it was just a matter of time before things ignited, right? Hey, you're around my age back then, so you should understand, John said, feeling validated and a bit elated. I never had a college campus life. At community college, it was just go to class and leave. I can barely remember any classmates' names, Jack shrugged. Hannah kicked Jack to interrupt him, opening the car door to let the two injured men in while continuing to probe. So, what happened? If you two were so perfect for each other, why did you end up marrying Sarah? John seemed lost in pleasant memories as he continued. We were inseparable for 2 weeks, our hearts racing from 0 to 180. Then what? Then Sarah showed up at my dorm, over 2 months pregnant. John sighed deeply. Ho ho ho, damn, Jack laughed gleefully. And then you did what you thought was the right thing. John smiled self-deprecatingly. I had no choice. I still loved Sarah, and besides, it was my child. So, I dropped out of school, packed up, moved back to Fort Fox, got married within a month, and became a father 6 months later. Then I started working as a building contractor. It took a long time to finally get my degree, but life changed. I don't regret it. Never. Hannah's tone hinted at skepticism. Okay, maybe sometimes. This reminds me of a movie with Nicolas Cage, Jack began, but then he noticed something and signaled Hannah to look ahead. In the distance, Tim was sitting on the ground, slumped against his car, holding a document. Reacting instinctively, Hannah hit the brakes hard enough to screech. Hearing the noise, Tim looked towards their car. Chapter 24, Only a Devil Plays with Hearts. The three of them exchanged glances, feeling a sense of impending doom. Despite their gossip about John, it was only because they were all so close. But Tim usually acted like a tough guy around everyone, and now they had stumbled upon his privacy. Damn it, it's your fault, Jack, for making me stop the car, Hannah complained in a low voice. I didn't. I just tapped you, Jack defended himself weakly. John had the most exaggerated expression. Oh God, he's not going to kill us to silence us, is he? Just as the three of them held their breath, Tim wiped his eyes and stood up. He walked over to the car, expressionless, and looked at them. I don't want to go home today. Do you guys have a place to drink? The three nodded vigorously, and John stammered, I was just heading to Hannah and Jack's place. Jack said he prepared a lot of food. Do you want to join us? Without a word, Tim opened the door, got in, and sat in the back seat with John. Hannah stepped on the gas, and they drove off. The car was silent for a while until Jack cautiously asked, Tim, are you okay? Tim was silent for a moment, his voice thick with emotion. When Isabella woke up, she called a lawyer and gave me a divorce agreement. She doesn't want anything, just to end our relationship. The car fell silent again. After a while, John patted Tim on the shoulder, trying to comfort him. You deserve better. Jack opened his mouth, unsure what to say. In his mind, this might not be such a bad thing. Back at Hannah's place, Jack asked her to move a high stool into the kitchen for him, where he started preparing dinner. Tim joined Hannah in the living room to play PS games, while the idle John wandered into the kitchen, asking if he could help. Is your injury okay? Jack asked in surprise. John pointed to his leg. Aren't you also injured? Jack sighed and assigned John to peel garlic and wash vegetables. They chatted as they worked. Is that lady doctor still single? Now in a private setting, they spoke as old friends, and John had come to see Jack as an equal. Jack felt no need to hold back. You mean Clarice? I saw she was still wearing a wedding ring, so I didn't ask. Besides, it's been so many years. Married people are the easiest to hook up with, right? These fiery types usually aren't satisfied in certain areas because their husbands start neglecting them. And you have a past with her. Maybe you could rekindle things, Jack said, feigning seriousness. John looked at him in surprise and shook his head repeatedly. No, I can't do that. Just thinking about it makes me nervous. Thoughts like that ruin many lives. Ha ha ha, I got you. That's the right answer. Jack laughed mischievously. John's tense expression relaxed, and he breathed a sigh of relief. Don't try to tempt me, you devil. Jack corrected him. It's devil. Demons destroy, devils play with hearts. But I think you should at least. Clarice. Yes, talk to your old flame. At least, you owe her an apology, don't you? John thought for a moment and nodded. Next time I see her, I'll try to explain. I really didn't handle things well back then. Jack smiled inwardly but kept his expression neutral. Either way, I noticed Clarice looked at you strangely that day. Maybe she still has feelings for you. You should ask. Maybe she's already divorced and just hasn't taken off the ring, or they might be separated. These things are quite common in the USA. Hey, shut up, you devil. John laughed and flicked a parsley stalk at Jack, the water droplets sprinkling like holy water. I'll clear things up with her. He thought for a moment and added, though it was unclear how or what he would clarify. Jack was pleased with John's response. In his previous life, he hadn't experienced the reality of American society. Most of his information and stereotypes came from TV shows and the internet. Before the wave of political correctness swept the USA, most TV shows reflected universal values that resonated with many. They often highlighted societal issues like drugs, guns, gangs, and corrupt politicians, which was why Jack liked American TV shows despite disliking the country. At least back then, some Americans were still sensible. The characters Jack encountered in this TV-like world were rational, emotional, kind, and just, each with their flaws but also very human. As night fell, dinner time approached after nearly 3 hours of preparation. You two unscathed folks should get your butts over here to help with the dishes, Jack called out to the living room. Hannah and Tim, who had been playing games and bickering on the sofa, obediently put down their controllers and walked over. They were amazed to see the lavish spread of dishes. As a developed country capable of bleeding the world dry through dollar manipulation, American supermarkets had ridiculously cheap ingredients. Braised pork hock, garlic lobster, grilled lamb chops, tomato beef stew, and more filled the table, all for less than $100. Of course, the ingredients were paid for by the rich girl Hannah. Jack barely had $50 to his name, and with payday still days away, he was still out $5,000 in bail money with no idea when he'd get it back. Why haven't I had these before? How many more recipes are you hiding? Hannah shook Jack's arm, making his heart race. Tim pretended not to notice anything, looking around. Is there any beer? This usually serious guy seemed to genuinely treat Jack and Hannah as friends, ignoring their ambiguous relationship. Want to try some Circean white wine? Jack's eyes lit up. He figured if Tim wanted to drink to forget, he might as well knock him out and see what this usually stern guy was like drunk. He pulled out a crate of ergwater from the corner. He had discovered that Americans couldn't handle the strong smell of traditional Chinese liquors like Maodai but were more accepting of lighter, higher-proof liquors. Today marks the first round of recommendations. Please don't hesitate to vote for it. Please don't shelve the book for now. Ensuring good follow-up data is crucial for it to survive to the third round of recommendations, which will help more people see this book. Also, remember to invest. The stockpile is being diligently built up, so your investments won't be in vain. Once again, I bow in gratitude to all the readers. Chapter 25, Breakthrough in Physical Fitness. Jack hardly ever drinks, though he occasionally enjoys the aroma of a cigar. The case of 52-degree ergwater he had bought from a Chinese supermarket was meant for cooking, with 12 600 milliliters bottles in total. It didn't take long for Hannah to sneakily drink 2 bottles. She said the taste reminded her of the potato whiskey her father used to make on their farm. John's wound was still healing, so Jack only poured a small amount for him and himself. He then poured a third of a glass each for the other 2, added some ice, and warned, "This is the Carician version of vodka. Don't drink it too quickly." Everyone raised their glasses. Traditionally, a toast was expected, but saying "cheers" for strong liquor seemed inappropriate. Hannah, craving a drink, quickly said, "To being single." The other 3 laughed and echoed, "To being single." Unsurprisingly, the 3 sweet-toothed Americans praised the iced pork knuckles. They didn't leave the other dishes untouched either. By the time they finished 2 bottles of ergwota, only a few vegetable leaves remained on the table, the rest had been devoured by the 4 carnivores. John, rubbing his swollen belly, looked distressed. My diet plan is ruined. Jack, how do you eat so well every day and still stay in shape? Is that the advantage of youth? Jack, busy wresting a bottle from a slightly tipsy Hannah to prevent her from undoing their dinner, explained. Hannah turned the guest room into a sparring room. Before I got hurt, I practiced Krav Maga with her every day. Staying here isn't free. I have to endure her beatings, cook, do laundry, clean the house, and take care of the yard. Hannah, unhappy at the empty bottle, frowned and retorted, I'm almost losing to you now. My coach says I'm ready for the E1 level exam in Israel. Jack rolled his eyes. After enduring many beatings, the system showed his combat skills were proficient. He estimated that once his physical fitness broke through 20 tonight, he'd be able to pin her down tomorrow. So, what are your plans? John asked, turning to Tim. Tim shook his head, grimacing as he sipped his drink, clearly struggling with the taste but unwilling to set the glass down. I don't know. Maybe time will sort things out. I have an irresponsible father, and I've always wanted to be a good husband to avoid his mistakes. But Jack affectionately tousled Hannah's blonde hair, stopping her from opening another bottle. Maybe it's harsh to say, but I think Isabella ended your marriage so decisively because she knows you too well. She's in hell and doesn't want to drag you down with her. Tim wiped a tear from his eye, downing his drink in one gulp, his voice hoarse with emotion. I've considered that possibility, but I still love her. John agreed with Jack's assessment. You've been a cop for years, dealing with addicts more than anyone. When Isabella left you, you should have known the woman you loved was already gone. Don't let a sense of responsibility bind your future. Eventually, a heartbroken and drunk Tim was sent home by John. Watching the taxi drive away, Jack sighed. Addiction destroys lives. After cleaning up, Jack saw Hannah asleep on the sofa and couldn't help but smile. Despite her acting like a heavy drinker, she could only handle about 3 to 4 ounces of alcohol. As he scooped her up in a princess carry to take her to her room, he felt her body suddenly stiffen. He turned his head just in time to avoid a punch aimed at his face. Hannah! Jack called out urgently. Recognizing his voice, Hannah's unfocused blue eyes widened before relaxing upon seeing his face. She sniffed around like a puppy searching for a familiar scent, then wrapped her arm around his neck, snuggling closer. Jack felt both amused and concerned. He couldn't tell if Hannah's attachment to him was more romantic or familial. Gently, he placed her on the bed, took off her shoes, covered her with a blanket, and quietly left the room. Hannah's reaction wasn't new to Jack. Even with his basic psychology skills, he could identify her symptoms as typical PTSD. Coupled with her aversion to men, he had tried to probe her past, but she always clammed up, leaving him at a loss. Back in his attic room, Jack lay on his bed, removed the bandage from his right leg, healed the wound with a healing spell, and opened the system. He used 2 gold coins to purchase 1 point in physical fitness, pushing it to 20. There was no excruciating pain or expelling of foul black liquid. Instead, a tingling sensation started from his toes, traveled up his legs, along his spine, through his arms, and to his fingers and neck, finally converging at the top of his head. It felt like his entire skeleton had been reset to factory settings. He took off his clothes and stood before the mirror, admiring a body that looked like an ancient Greek marble sculpture. His muscle lines were symmetrical and perfectly proportioned, and his skin was flawless, with even the scars from his adolescent acne gone. Jack clicked his tongue in satisfaction, striking a few poses in the mirror. With his physique and mixed-race good looks, he joked to himself that he could put action movie stars in San Fernando Valley out of work. That night, Jack experienced the benefits of having both mental and physical stats at 20. His sleep time was reduced to less than 3 hours, giving him over 5 extra hours each day for training, studying, or entertainment. On the last day before his leave ended, Jack and Hannah visited Hunter and Dee Dee again. Jack was grateful for the cold python Hunter had given him. Without it, he doubted he could have left Bronson Tower alive. Well, aside from the shot in the calf, which was Tim's fault. The only downside was that the python only held 6 rounds, and even with a speed loader, reloading was cumbersome. Jack hoped to get his hands on a high-powered semi-automatic pistol to deal with foes wearing body armor. Though his mastery-level handgun skills assured him of headshots within 20 meters, his current role as an ordinary patrol officer required him to keep a low profile.